afternoon and welcome everyone to the first edition of ETMarkets Conclave. The backers of cryptocurrency believe that it is the most revolutionary technological innovation since the internet. But its detractors think of it as a glorified Ponzi scheme. Welcome everyone to the first edition of ETMarkets Conclave, where we demystify and de-jargonize financial markets with the help of the brightest mind in the world of finance. Today's edition is thanks to our presenting partner, WazirX, India's most trusted Bitcoin and cryptocurrency exchange, where you can buy, sell, and hold Bitcoin, Ethereum, Ripple, Litecoin, and more cryptocurrencies. We will also like to thank our knowledge partner, Gift. We have a galaxy of speakers lined up for you. So let's kickstart the event with a welcome note from our editor at economictimes.com at Times Internet, Mr. Deepak Ajwani. Mr. Ajwani has been involved in creating high-impact multimedia properties like Forbes India Celebrity 100 list and led the launch of www.forbesindia.com and its iPad edition. He is known for his deep domain knowledge in the media and entertainment space. Over to you, Mr. Ajwani.
Thank you, Chiranjeevi. Good day, everyone, and welcome to the ETMarkets Conclave on cryptocurrency. RBI, in its recent announcement, has said that it is considering to launch an official digital currency. Although till now it has been shying away to officially recognize it as an asset class. We Indians are still not allowed to hold cryptocurrency officially or even trade or, for that matter, get a loan against it. So, are we missing out on the Bitcoin bet? There aren't even organizations today allowed in India officially to offer services around it. Yes, there has been a lot of volatility around the pricing for crypto, the mining capabilities, the legitimacy around this currency. And today's conclave is exactly an attempt to decode the mystery around crypto, the risk and the reward potential of crypto, and also what lies for India and the Indians in the realm of crypto and Bitcoin. We also recently reported on ET how SEBI wants to promoters to be selling off their crypto assets first, even before they launch their IPO. So clearly, SEBI does not favor holding crypto assets. The noted market veteran Rakesh Jhunjhunwala has clearly said he is not joining the Bitcoin party. So very clearly, even he doesn't favor it. Now, that means the jury is still out on whether you should bet on Bitcoin or you should shy away from it and be safe. To understand all these issues, the risk reward and the potential that we might be missing by shying away from it, we've lined up some of the best experts and minds who've done it and who understand the nuances of Bitcoin and crypto. For complete clarity for businesses and the future that lies ahead for them if they miss the bus, or the bonanza that lies ahead of them and how does one prepare for it, we will have conversations with experts today and decode what lies ahead for India and the Indians on the Bitcoin bet. Thank you so much for joining us on this conclave today. Over to you, Chiranjeevi.
Thank you so much, sir. In our opening event of the afternoon, we have keynote address from Mr. Prasanna Lohar, Head of Innovation at DCB Bank. Mr. Lohar is a professional banker, having experience in digital and innovation strategies with more than 18 years of experience as an innovator who has delivered rock-solid software solutions for leading enterprises with lean and agile teams. Joining him is Mr. Sarat Chandra, Chapter Head of GBA India, a startup mentor, emerging technology evangelist, ecosystem builder. He is recognized as Hedera MVP and has mentored multiple startups in blockchain and fintech space. Mr. Lohar and Mr. Chandra will shed light on blockchain, the technology on which Satoshi Nakamoto's Bitcoin was founded, and its many possibilities. Over to you, Mr. Lohar and Mr. Chandra.
Thanks, Chiranjeev, for the introduction. And I would like to thank ETMarkets for giving me the opportunity to shed light on Bitcoin and the digital currency space. Now, if I talk about the potential of blockchain itself, there are some reports which suggest that the global blockchain market can go up to 37 billion in the coming 5 years. And there are multiple use cases where blockchain has shown potential, but I will restrict my talk about payments in general, payments and cross-border payments, because that's where most of the regulators, they have swung into action in the last couple of months. And regulators, along with global bodies, have made great strides in this space. Now, yesterday, there was an announcement by the leading central banks in APAC and MENA region, Central Bank of the UAE, Hong Kong Monetary Authority, and the Digital Currency Institute of People of PBOC, the Chinese Central Bank. And they have launched a multi-CBDC bridge project where they are exploring how central bank digital currencies can be used for cross-border payments and how we can make payments efficient. Because cross-border payments, if you talk about it, it's a multi-stakeholder process, and there's not enough transparency how funds move from one jurisdiction to another. And this multi-stakeholder project, which was announced yesterday, can be a beacon of hope, and that's how countries like India, and since India is part of G20 as well, and G20 has a mandate to work on cross-border payments and ensure its efficiency. So coming from that perspective, I think a lot of work is being done as we speak. And Bank of International Settlements, it says that more than 80% of central banks across the globe, they're exploring CBDCs or central bank digital currencies for cross-border payments. Now, there are different ways of how you can look at central bank digital currencies. They can be different forms as well. One can be a wholesale CBDC where there's not a disruption to the existing monetary system, but there are other ways. For example, a retail CBDC, which can, if we are choosing the right design choices, can spur innovation in the retail payment space. And if you look at domestically with the announcement of NUE, new umbrella entity, where even Amazon, Axis Bank, and others, they have jumped into the fray. And if you're looking at digital transactions of 1 billion per day, then we need to have a robust system which can ensure interoperable blockchain-based payment systems so that you have real-time settlements. Because as we see, digital payments are growing day by day. Similarly, the failure of transactions is a big concern. And that's where a single source of truth blockchain can really bring a lot of difference. And that's where a lot of investment and a lot of capital has to be invested so that we have a robust and efficient system. Now, I would like to hand it over to Prasanna and seek his thoughts on what are some of the ways, especially in banking, where he thinks blockchain can be made applicable. Prasanna, over to you.
I think we are facing a little bit of issue with Mr. Prasanna's line.
Right. So let me talk a bit more about an interbank payment settlement where in Italy, close to 100 banks, they came together, and this project was done on Tricoda. So when we talk about scalability, now blockchain as a platform, it has matured enough and it can support transactions at scale. And interbank settlements is one good area where a lot of central banks across the globe can come together, and especially if you're looking at a wholesale CBDC, interbank payment settlement systems can be made more efficient. That's one of the areas. And if you look at other domains where blockchain can be made applicable, retail payments is one, e-commerce is another one, supply chain is a no-brainer. There's some reports which call supply chain as the biggest killer app for blockchain. So if you look at trade finance and even bond markets, there's a lot of work going on in the APAC region. Temasek Holdings and Singapore Exchange, they have launched a project where bond issuance and bond settlements can be done on blockchain. With different projects across the globe, and especially in APAC. APAC happens to be one of the leading players where blockchain is being implemented at scale in different jurisdictions. So what we can look at, what India can really look forward to is take the best practices of different projects in the region and then assimilate that into the current digital currency project with RBI is exploring. And it would make sense to involve people from the industry, the real stakeholders, so that once the paper is out, once the CBDC paper is out, everyone is on board and it can be, the initiative can be taken forward. Because public-private collaboration is the way forward, even if you're looking at CBDCs. The Bank for International Settlements report specifically talks about if you're looking at retail CBDCs or synthetic CBDCs, you need to have a lot of private player participation. And that's the way, if you're looking at coming up with innovative solutions in the payment space, retail payments, or even B2B cross-border payments, you need to involve the right people from the ecosystem and make it an inclusive approach. I think Prasanna is back, so I would hand it over to Prasanna to get his views on blockchain and see his perspective. Thank you.
Mr. Prasanna, I believe you're on mute. Mute, sir. Mr. Loha, can you hear me? Hi, sir. I believe you're on mute. Mr. Lohar. I think he's not able to hear us. In the meantime, Mr. Chandra, you were talking about the supply chain implications of blockchain as well as on the banking side. Could you throw a little bit more light on that aspect?
If you're looking at supply chain, in fact, there are some startups which are looking at vaccine tracking on blockchain, so that you actually get to see where the vaccine is coming from, and if at all there are some counterfeit players which might creep in, right? I mean, if you're looking at a mass rollout of vaccines, so even immunity passports, so that the person.
Okay, done.
If you're looking at immunity passports, can be issued on blockchain, so that you have a tamper-proof evidence that this person has, and so that it can open up another areas where it can be reused. If you're resuming our workplaces, and let's say if you're opening up travel bubbles across the globe, these immunity passports can really be helpful.
Thank you, Mr. Chandra. I believe Mr. Prasanna is now with us.
Hello.
Hi, Mr. Prasanna. Thank you so much for joining us. You're now live.
Yeah, so can I share my screen?
Sure, sir.
So please allow me to enable the screen. Huh?
Mr. Prasanna, you would have a share option down at the bottom pane.
Yeah, I have received that. Okay.
Yeah. In the meantime, I'll just throw a quick fact down for our viewers. For those who don't know, the first Bitcoin transaction took place back in 2010 when a man in Brazil ordered 10,000 Bitcoin worth of pizza from a man in UK. And, now if you look back in hindsight, what a bad decision that was. So, yeah, I think we have Mr. Prasanna ready now.
Yeah, just a second. I'm just opening my presentation. So can you see my screen? Screen, right? Are you able to see my screen?
Not yet, sir. Not yet. Have you shared your screen on from the bottom pane?
I'm not seeing I'm seeing so many files out there. Just a moment.
Okay, in the meantime, I'll just reintroduce Mr. Prasanna for our viewers. Mr. Prasanna is head of innovation at DCB Bank. He's a professional banker having experience in digital and innovation strategies with more than 18 years of work as an innovator who has delivered rock solid software solutions for industry, leading enterprises with lean and agile teams. I guess now Mr. Prasanna is ready for his presentation. I'll just hand it over to him. Mr. Prasanna, over to you.
Yeah, just
Your presentation is visible, sir. Mr. Prasanna, if I may ask you to make the presentation on full screen, it will be better for viewing.
yeah, I'm doing it.
Thank you.
Yeah, so it's visible, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Please go ahead.
Okay. So first of all, sorry for the delay. Okay, and thank you so much, organizers, for me and on behalf of me and Sharath for this discussion on the blockchain. Today we'll talk a lot about the blockchain, why blockchain is making noise, and how it's going to be a change agent for human beings. Rather, we'll touch upon how human transformation will happen with the help of technology like blockchain. Okay. So thank you so much, ET Economic Times, for this opportunity to share our views jointly. That's all about me. I work in DCB Bank as a technology head into digital innovation and architecture. So friends, when we talk about any of the banking scenarios, by 2030s, humans will be banking with no banks and with a question mark, which I am attaching. And the answer could be yes for that. If you say no, I think there are some companies like decentralized finance companies who are already operating without any of those banking license, wherein people are putting money, depositing money, opening their savings account as well as a lending. And for that money, the beauty of that money is that they are getting interest rates also, just like the way banks are doing. And I think those days are not far, like when we will do the banking without banks. Being a banker, it's very challenging thing, which I am speaking, but I think that's how we have seen the adoption of the cryptocurrencies across the globe. And with the right pace of a regulation and right compliance, we'll certainly see this light. This was our story, like during pandemic, before pandemic. And the question could be, how many of you are visiting bank branches now? I think that number has really reduced. And the way I had opened my bank account way back in 2000, it took around 35 days to open bank account. And today, if I ask any of my friends on this, would you like to open a bank account in 30-40 days? People will say lot of digitization happen. Aadhaar is there, eKYC is there, nowadays video KYC is also there. And these technologies are really helping to transform human life. Okay, as far as the banking is concerned, people would not like to visit branches. Those customers like millennial customers or upcoming customers, they will not like to visit any of those branches. Now let's take example of this tiny but mighty country, one of those innovative country, Estonia, wherein every citizen in 1991 was given 10 euros and asked, start your life. This country was about to get vanished from the map. And in 97, this country has come up with a ledger technology, and today this country has become a template for every governance use case. This country has more than 300 plus use case on blockchain. Say, talk about toll collection, talk about any of those payments, voting, law, everything is on blockchain. What does it mean? It means that transparency and zero corruption, rather zero, less of corruption in this country. On those notes, even country like Dubai has also started their journey to become a blockchain country with a mission of a smart Dubai by 2021. Like that, there are many countries that have started this vision. Similarly, at India also, we should look at how we can collaborate together and become a country like Estonia. At least not Estonia, but we can really cut down all of your operational cost. Say, Pantapradhan has announced that Atmanirbhar or smart supply chains. How can we utilize this technology like blockchain or a Yeah, that's how our agenda should be. To today, the blockchain brings a lot of use cases. I think Sarath was talking about some of the use cases. But if you touch upon every application which is based upon internet was an era, right? When 1995 internet came in our life, and we have seen, or we are seeing these days, Paytms, phone pays, ordering food or pizza. You spoke about the first pizza being ordered with the $10,000, which is on Bitcoin 2009. January or something. And I think since then, every business model is now on internet. But this internet has some flaws. Okay, say example, on the internet, still we have a threat like cyber security. With the help of this internet, we are not sure whether the food is coming from a right hotel or it is coming from a or how we are carrying this logistic in between. And these kind of a trust factors are always there on internet model. And when technology like blockchain comes and says that I will do a proper smart digital KYC, I will have a proper diamond industry on a blockchain where payment on a cross border will happen from one merchant on in a flash of time. We can go and deep down more than hundreds of use cases, right? And at India level, we can bring on use cases on land registration, solar coin, which which was being practiced by Uttar Pradesh government, or a land registration bespoke, or we can have multiple use cases which will be really helpful for ultimately human beings in India. So this was a current trend, right? Or gone these trends where we have seen these logos like Kodaks and BlackBerry, Yahoos. These are vanished. They have vanished. Similarly, banks or current generation of some of those technology service providers, service Swiggies, those also can be vanished, right? We have seen Nokia, Yahoo, Kodak, or AOL. They never understood how technology is moving, how all of a sudden iPhone or Android iOS is coming, or how technology is going, or business models are going on a internet. And I think human beings are now in between mobile and internet adoption. And in next 2 to 3 years, we'll be in the land of a connected platforms, where we will need more and more trust for those variables, for those smart houses, for that smart car, or for that smart refrigerator. And blockchain comes and says, I am there as a change agent. I'll come and safeguard you in a connected platform also. That's how we need to see how blockchain is going to change our life. We might be in mobile and internet era, but looking at the future, we should really adopt blockchain. Similarly, every organization, not only bank, but every retail, every industry is moving from not digital to extreme digital. What is meant by extreme digital? So, let's say example, Prasanna is entering a bank branch, and Sharath comes out as a branch manager and says, Mr. Prasanna, you were searching for some land or some property in that area, and I think we can help you. We can help you with some loan. Rather, Sharath doesn't know me because he knows me because of my facial was being captured during the customer onboarding. And moreover, I have given a security consent ki, if I enter in a branch manager should come and understand I am there. And moreover, Sharath can understand my facial expression where I am happy or unhappy. I think these experiences are happening, but when we'll keep it on internet kind of a model, I don't know. Anybody can enter, and Sharath may appear that for Sharath it may appear the person has entered. So I think for that purpose, we need more and more trust in also in an extreme digital environment. Our communications have changed from keyboard, mouse to the voice, and all of a sudden our communication in future era will be on a gesture based, right? We just look at each other and we'll smile and we'll understand what we are thinking in our mind, right? That's how brain to brain interface gonna be a reality next 15 to 20 years, where Facebook, Google's are. That's how we have seen a company gone, where those days during keyboard, have you thought of you will speak from your mouth and your Alexa, Siri will understand you, right? So I think these are the trends which are coming in human life, and internet is a backbone for that. But internet is not suffice. There has to be some technology like blockchain has to come, so that these new logos like Netflix or WhatsApp or Amazon, where data security are concerns, how a particular transaction happened for a particular apparel being sold from Paytm or a Flipkart, but actually you receive something else. So I think this whole traceability we can really nurture, or we can really have with the help of a blockchain, we can really do a better job out here. So during pandemic, what we have seen in last 12 years, every industry has collapsed. supply chain has closed and it has impacted your every transaction, trade finance, ultimately financial industries collapse. And so what is the ultimate aim for a country like India here onwards? How do we do smart supply chains? How do we remove our operational costs? Like in a banking, there are a lot of operational costs, settlement, reconciliation, and so on. And with the blockchain, we can remove that man in middle. We can remove a lot of corruption in middle. We can have a smart transactions without intermediaries. And that's how we can really look at our current story tomorrow becomes a blockchain story. 17 sustainable goals, like UN has announced these goals way back in 2015. By 2030, we should have a zero poverty, zero hunger, and a clean water. And moreover, post-COVID, people are more health conscious. How can we have a better health? How can we have a global ecosystem where I know a health index of a country? How can we improve? So, and World Economic Forum says some of these guidelines can be achieved with the help of our technology like blockchain. Hear me out again. Blockchain will come and say, I will give a clean water. I will understand with a IoT device, how can I measure a clean water at that moment, and there will be no corruption to say that we use recycled water, which is one of the mandate government of India will come up in the next few years. Maharashtra government is already working on that. Arogya Setu app could have been on blockchain, right? Similarly, no poverty, zero hunger, and many more business models where we need traceability, how money is moved for those NGOs from global countries to those upcoming emerging countries. So a lot of politics happens and ultimately money is not received, right? So I think blockchain comes and gives a lot of transparency and will give an assurance that we will be able to meet 17 sustainable goals by 2030. Half of, or I think 1 billion people are without digital identity in the world, and 2 billion people carries only $1 or $2 per day, and they don't have bank account. And when we talk about financial inclusion, RuPay, NPCI is driving that with the Aadhaar, and it's not actually reality. When you really deep dive, there are a lot of other brothers, sisters who don't have a digital identity. And blockchain is an opportunity tomorrow. If I bring Aadhaar or any of the countries' digital identity on a blockchain, it gives a lot of incentives when the same Aadhaar or the same digital identity is connected to many other services in insurance, or you talk about some of those facilities given by government for SMEs. Many business model can come just like Estonia have done. This is another 2.5 billion don't have a financial access, and we certainly financial inclusion index can be improved with the help of a blockchain. Lot of data security theft on your Facebook or WhatsApp or Twitter. Recently, I think Elon Musk or Bill Gates has announced that you will get double of Bitcoins, and that's how it was a fraud, right? You could have avoided if you could have really built some security layer on a blockchain. So appeal to all of these social medias where customer will have on-off kind of a button, and traceability, how my data is being utilized. We may keep on talking so many use cases like having unique identity. A lot of forgery happens on these passports or PAN cards. We have to put those billboards or in front of your property. This property belongs to me. Like in 21st century, you're talking my property belongs to me, right? But if you put that property on blockchain, and nobody can really claim. This is how some of the state governments are doing pilot in India, and most, I think 7 to 8 countries already adopted this kind of stuff. So blockchain comes and says that I will give you trust in sharing economy. Today we might be having those Ola, Uber, or some of the co-working spaces, but in next 3 to 4 years we will have more than 350 entities on aggregation model on sharing economy. That's how study from World Economic Forum says. And when we'll deal with this chain of aggregation of Ola, Uber, or some content to be published on some of the media websites, we will need more and more trust between those stakeholders. And blockchain comes as an additional layer and says that I will handle this whole economy, right? So we can't imagine our life without Aadhaar, and this Aadhaar being utilized everywhere in banking, health, travel, career. And say example, Aadhaar has some issue, like some failures, where we'll go. But if you build Aadhaar complete ecosystem where consent, like self-sovereign model, right, where consent is given back to the customer. Look at this high-level architecture. I will not deep down, but if I create an Aadhaar chain where all the hops starting from customer journey till Aadhaar ecosystem, and way back even consent to the customer, your Aadhaar being utilized here and there. So and customers say yes, no, based upon your whole Aadhaar data can be secured, which we have seen since adoption of Aadhaar in 16, 17. We have seen a lot of frauds have happened, but bringing on Aadhaar like Aadhaar blockchain backed service, we'll see a lot of issues will be resolved. In internet era, when you start using your credit card, your data, we always say that your data is not safe. So blockchain comes and say, I will really help, right? This is what we have a global use case like Bitcoin. Bitcoin is a use case of a blockchain where certainly there is no settlement required, no reconciliation required. Can I not use the same model in banking where no settlement, reconciliation, so much of cost, operational overheads? That's how is the magic of Bitcoin. So Bitcoin is a technology has developed for some cause, but we can utilize same technology with enhanced features, enhanced security, enhanced interoperability, enhanced speed for our day-to-day exercise. So like Bitcoin, there could be number of 5,000 plus cryptocurrencies, and tomorrow you and me can come together, start our own rice coin or solar coin or Amul or milk coin, where it has backed by some asset. And that assets, and that's how magic of cryptocurrency can be used in tokenization, so on. I think with the right set of compliance regulation, many government has started working on it. More than 25 plus government in the world are working on blockchain. Blockchain is not the only technology which will go and say I am solving the problem. It has to work with the mobility. It has to work with the cloud tech computing, AI, and other technologies. Right? Blockchain is in the back end giving a smart contract and smart trigger for any of those operations happening on your user interfaces on mobile or web application and so on. So, but it's very, very powerful. Today's blockchain, when we'll talk about any of those enterprise application, will be blockchain 2.0. 1.0 is all about your cryptocurrency like Bitcoin, Ripple, Ethereum, so on. But the examples like Arogya Setu, Aadhaar, or any of those enterprise centralized KYC will be part of either blockchain 2.0 or maybe in the future when your IoT variables or decentralized finance will be more and more. So that's how blockchain 3.0 is there. So, and we can model our any of those applications based upon, say, in banking, if I bring on 80 plus banks on a centralized KYC on blockchain, it will be a permissioned, like it is a part of a private net. That's how it works. So your current system can be re-architectured as a blockchain, which is a public, where you can download it on your laptop or be part of a blockchain network, public blockchain network. But in case of a private, where it is in between healthcare and insurance and a bank, or a car manufacturer and insurance company and bank and other system, that will be a private blockchain. That's how countries like India, countries like Estonia will do it. I think I'll give just a small example. A transaction which happened from your mobile phone or on website, right? It takes that hop from, say, example I'm doing for a HDFC Bank's customer. The transaction routes to the HDFC Bank's merchant network, and from HDFC Bank server to the centralized trusted system of master visa, or in this case like for Aadhaar, NPCI. Then the transaction is routed to the beneficiary bank's network, where a lot of servers are being kept, 2-3 servers like presentation tier or middle tier and database tier, and to manage those so many people, right? And just imagine, right, so much of hardware and so much of software, so much of cost we have put for existing business models, and moreover it requires more settlement. At times people call contact center with a lot for disputes, a lot of cost, manual intervention could be a error. And just imagine, I revamp this whole traditional bank like this. Just imagine crypto bank with no reconciliation, no manual intervention, less of corruption. That's how life will be. And it's not an overnight job. It will take some time, right? But we should aspire for this kind of use cases where we have no branches, instant settlement, quite a lot of incentives like cost reduction, what Indian government speaks about. Cost should be reduced, operations should be reduced. So these kind of things we can really achieve with a blockchain. So what we have seen from barter system.
Mr. Lohar, if I may interrupt you, I'm sorry. We are running short of time, so we would also like to squeeze in a little bit of Q&A between you and Mr. Chandra.
Yeah,
and,
so
I will request Mr. Chandra to move forward with the Q&A. Thank you so much, Mr. Lohar.
Yeah, So in fact, this was my last slide by saying what could be the future of money, right? So we'll hear from some questions and we'll see.
Mr. Chandra, if we can start with the Q&A with Mr. Lohar. Thank you.
Are there any questions, Chiranjeevi?
Yes, sir. Mr. Chandra, if you can hear me. Yeah, can we start with the Q&A with Mr. Lohar? I'm sure you have a few questions for him.
Yeah.
Yeah, in fact, I have one question for Prasanna, and that would be around the consortium. In 17, we had a bank chain. So what are some of the ways we can have some of the sector-specific consortium, let's say banking, supply chain, or even security markets or bond markets, and how we can use those consortiums or self-regulation groups to drive adoption of blockchain?
I think very good question. I think this is what lagging, Sarath, in an Indian context, that what we have experienced or experimented with the bank chain 2017 till 2018-19. Then I think what we have seen in a normal technology model also, say example account aggregator model, wherein there are 8 banks already been onboarded, and still we are struggling about what will be the incentivization model for among banks, or among AA, or those typical technology like FIFUs and FIUs. Similarly, I think we need to bring a right set of a use case, and for that use case, build on a consortiums. Say example, centralized KYC or KYC being for among all the banks, and with the right set of an incentivization model that will drive a interest for banks coming together and work for that particular use case. I think success will lie when right set of regulations will come together and create that whole framework in India, or a trade finance, I think, or you talk about any of those other use cases wherein insurance, like insurance company coming together along with the bank for a quick insurance. I think that's how this model should come and say we will really help each other. I think we together being talking a lot about some of those models with some other companies like Niti Aayog or insurance, or you talk about Aadhaar or SEBI. I think if they can come together and create their own ledger technology or on top of existing hyperledgers or Ethereum for right set of use case, I think that will be very, very beneficial for adoption of a blockchain in India sooner or later. Otherwise, it will be always a kind of a individual organization game.
And if I can add to your point, I believe that regulators should join these consortiums or working groups so that they can drive conversations in these groups towards fruition, right? So that you are moving in the right direction. Because you can form a consortium and it may not meet its end goal if you don't have the backing of the regulator. So let's say SEBI enters into a group and guides about adoption of blockchain in bond markets, then I think that can be one of the great ways to look at it.
Yeah. So I think recently, for Niti Aayog, wherein Niti has opened a window for national blockchain strategy and relevant inputs. That's how you, me, and some of our other experts has given this kind of inputs, where Niti should coordinate or collaborate with the companies like NEGD, CDAC, Revit for account aggregator, NPCI for payments, or Skills India for education adoption into normal like engineering itself. We should have a blockchain adoption. I think 4 or 5 pillars for adoption. Industry should practice and pilot some of those internal use cases and get part of consortiums. And at the same time, academia also be part of this blockchain and emerging techs into their skills or education program, so that equation becomes easy for India like country. I think we are on the right path as of now. The way we have seen last 1-2 years, adoption of blockchain, it's huge. At least government of India understand this is the agenda for us, just like other countries. And I think sooner or later we should be part of those blockchain countries, right?
What would be some of the priority areas for you where you can see blockchain adoption taking off in the coming months or years?
I think banking is on top of that, wherein trade finance or cross border will be a very good use case for a blockchain. One of the use cases we have done with the income tax for a Form 26 and the Form 15GH along with the Kotak, HDFC and DCB Bank. We have done this POC. I think it has to go to the next level. So the use cases where there are more than 2-3 stakeholders, a lot of operational work like CKYC, or you talk about cross border, that will be those will be a very good use cases. And inherently, Sarath, what is going to happen? Once we land up a era of variables, automatically those use cases typically will come onto the blockchain, because today we don't have a standards around IoTs. Those standards will be strengthened with the help of a technology like blockchain. Other areas, like when we are opening our APIs to the fintechs and startup companies where there are more than 2-3 stakeholders, I think we can safeguard this data transparency and with the help of a blockchain. Various smart cities coming in India. I think more than 50 plus smart cities coming in India. I think these smart cities should act as a Estonia and build that model respectively. Few use cases which we have seen in non-media and entertainment industry, where there are a lot of operational overheads and telecom industries. The way they do the collection with the people who are availing for their services, or somebody is giving their media and they don't get a proper royalty. These kind of services, already some of the companies are working out of this model internationally on a blockchain. I think in India, state governments, I think 10 plus state governments are doing a lot heavy. Telangana or Maharashtra or Kerala, Assam, or these governments are heavily. Uttar Pradesh, they have done something on energy, solar energy, and so on. I think these kind of use cases who are benefited for citizens of India, those will be prominently taken up. Say having a wheat coin in Punjab, which will give a lot of overhead. Warehouse financing, which will remove a lot of overheads into a lot of corruptions rather. So these use cases will be eventually part of any of those ecosystems, Sarath.
I'm sorry, gentlemen, if I may interrupt. We are terribly behind schedule, and we have some speakers lined up from different time zones. So I would have to ask you to conclude this conversation here, and we can of course carry this forward on a different platform or on a different day. Thank you so much for joining in.
Thank you so much, Chiranjeev. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, gentlemen. It was indeed an insightful conversation.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Moving on, blockchain technology indeed has far-reaching implications beyond cryptocurrencies, as you have just learned. It will most likely also be a foundation of any endeavors of central banks to launch their own sovereign digital currency. Next up, we have Mr. Massimo Buonomo, former United Nations expert on blockchain and cryptocurrency. Massimo acts as a board advisor and consultant for international organizations, central banks, and corporates on CBDCs, cryptocurrencies, RegTech, FinTech, artificial intelligence, and alternative data. He has over 20 years of experience in international finance and has worked as a university professor of FinTech and international finance in places like Rio de Janeiro, Turin, and Wuhan. He will provide us a peek into the world of central bank digital currencies and how they have evolved in recent years. Over to you, Mr. Buonomo, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much. Let me get the presentation right. Okay. As you said, I'm a former United Nations global expert in blockchain, cryptocurrencies, fintech, and RegTech. I act as international board member on blockchain issues for several international companies like Maximo and organizations. I'm former university professor of fintech, and I work all around the world. What I want to get right now is the concept of CBDCs. And in fact, as we know, there are two different models outstanding. One is one-tier model, where we have digital money to be transferred directly from the central bank by the social security system to a single person. Of course, the social security system holds all the updated information of the persons. And this is something that is been happening because of COVID-19. The money transfers to be done in the, for instance, in the USA to the people who need them the most, the unemployed people, for instance, could be done directly via digital currency transfers from the government via the social security system to them. So we have direct payments via the blockchain, which allow the money to go fast to the people according to their information. And then we have the two-tier model, which is mostly adopted by central banks nowadays, at least in as a concept. And we have digital money to be transferred via intermediaries, which are mostly banks, to a single person. This is a model to be adopted in China. It's been proposed in the US and several other countries. Banks are not so much in favor of the introduction of a digital currency because they would suffer the most if the one-tier system is adopted. But the companies that are worse off because of the introduction of a digital currency will be the likes of Visa, MasterCard, and we're going to see why. The processing of transactions in the future will not need a credit card, but only digital currency wallets. Now, we are talking about the evolution of CBDCs. Now we see where we stand now and where we were in the past. There was a recent survey in January 2021 of the BIS about CBDCs. And in this survey, in the CBDC space, central banks are all progressing from conceptual research to practical experimentation. Most of the banks, central banks, have no plans to issue CBDCs in the foreseeable future. However, central banks representing at least 20% of the world's population are likely to launch retail CBDCs the next 3 years. So this is a statement which looks a bit contradictory, but in fact it is not, because all central banks are looking at that and most will progress into that direction. What are the motivations for issuing general purpose CBDCs? First of all, payment related motivations, such as domestic payments efficiency and payment safety, financial inclusion, which is a big issue for less developed countries. And in fact, central banks located in emerging markets report stronger motivations for issuing CBDCs than central banks located in advanced economies, just because of financial inclusion. And then we see that CBDCs are already there. For instance, in Bahamas, the $100 was introduced very recently to help facilitate financial inclusion in this nation of 390,000 people spread across 30 inhabitant islands, many of them remote. That is why financial inclusion is a big step, a big issue for CBDCs. And then also there is the issue of financial stability and the control of monetary policy, and public, and also the fact that there's a public alternative in the case of widespread adoption of private digital currencies denominated in major foreign currencies like Libra. Now, in the past, as we said, we are seeing the evolution. Just 1 year ago, October 9th, 2020, Bank of Canada, Bank of England, Bank of Japan, ECB, and some other central banks issued, together with the BIS, the main principles of a report stating 3 main principles about CBDCs. And these principles have stayed the same. So we see that, in fact, the evolution of CBDCs, the main pillars are the same, but we are moving more and more towards that. The principles were, first of all, central banks should not compromise monetary or financial stability by issuing CBDCs. Second, CBDCs need to coexist with and complement existing form of money. And also features should promote innovation and efficiency. These pillars are always the same 1 year ago and now. The report outlined also fundamental principles and core features of CBDCs, but didn't give an opinion on whether to issue. As we said, now the 20% of central banks are more and more prone to issue CBDCs. Central banks are continuing to investigating CBDC feasibility without committing to issuance, and the possible adverse impact of CBDCs on bank funding and financial intermediation, as we're going to see, including the destabilizing run into central bank money, has been a concern of central banks. And why is that? We're going to see it as we take a concrete example. For instance, the DCEP. DCEP is the central bank digital currency, which is being tested right now in China. The main features of DCEP are, first of all, is exactly the same as paper money, but it is just a digital form. Also, it is to be transferred between users even without an account or without a mobile or internet network. But if users have a mobile phone and the user's mobile phone has a wallet, the digital currency can be transferred to another person by placing the two phones in physical contact, technology called NFC. Also, one interesting thing is that to introduce CBDCs, we do not need only blockchain technology, because this, in fact, the current technology would not be able to handle transaction volumes in China. This is an important issue. Then we see the main proposals, as we said, also in US, there is the issue of CBDCs. And in fact, there is the Digital Dollar Project, a partnership between the Digital Dollar Foundation and Accenture to advance the exploration of a digital dollar. We're talking here of exploration. No, it's not something concretely applied like in China. The main features are similar, though. It's first of all a two-tier model where a digital dollar will be a tokenized form of US dollar. Also, a digital dollar will operate alongside existing fiat currency and commercial bank money. And a digital dollar will be distributed through the existing two-tiered architecture of commercial banks and regulated intermediaries. But the digital dollar will not impact the Federal Reserve's ability to affect monetary policy and control inflation. Now, what is the impact of CBDC? The impact is, in fact, is positive for consumers. Why? Because if we think about in the current interest rate environment, the only advantage of having a bank account is that it enables digital payments because there is no interest remuneration. But the potential impact is crowding out of bank deposits. Why? Because there are many costs related to having a bank account, especially for every single transaction down, lower security because of breaches from hackers, and fees to be paid for electronic transactions using credit cards. So the use of digital currency eliminates the need of a bank account. All you need is a digital wallet, which allows you to hold digital money and makes you pay the bills using the mobile phone without using the credit card. There are no fees to be paid to credit card processing companies, Visa, MasterCard, even SWIFT. No fees to be paid to banks for bank money transfers or for holding a bank account. So this is, in few words, the presentation. And if there are some other questions, I would be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Mr. Bionomo. That was indeed a revelatory talk on CBDCs and what they entail. We will be moving on now to a very interesting panel discussion of which Mr. Bonomo is also part of. But before that, just a little bit of context. We know that Elon Musk has tweeted about Bitcoin. We know that Ray Dalio, the famous hedge fund manager, has written a note about Bitcoin. And we very well know that people like Bill Gates and Jhunjhunwala think about Bitcoin as a mania. With such financial elites talking and debating about Bitcoin, has Bitcoin finally gone mainstream? And that is the answer that our next panel of eminent speakers, including Mr. Bonomo, Mr. Ajit Khurana, who is former CEO of ZepPay and mentor at SOSVMOX, Mr. Anirudh Rastogi, founder Ikigai Law, Mr. Manish Kumar, co-founder and CEO, Grex and RealX, Mr. RVS Sridhar, ex-president and CTO at Axis Bank, and Mr. Siddharth Menon, who will be trying to exactly answer this question. I would like to hand it over to you, gentlemen, to take forward the discussion, enlighten us all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's an afternoon time post lunch, so the general moderator's job is to wake up everyone. So hello everyone, wake up. We have a very good panel members. Thank you for being here. Yeah, I was wondering, where is Sridhar? Sridhar, hi, finally we see you. So hi Massimo,
Hi.
Ajit, Siddharth, Anirudh, Sridhar. I will, to set the context, what I will do is I'll probably brag about a little bit of what knowledge I carry about cryptos. So since I have the mic first. So, just to give some context to the non-suspecting audience that we have, I will try and explain what is a cryptocurrency, what is a crypto asset, and what is a central bank digital currency. So crypto, in the basic form, all of these are encrypted blockchain-based forms of tokens that you can carry with you, just like you do cash. You have a digital version of cash, so you can't touch it, but it's very much there, and it's very much recorded, and you can't delete the record, and it's secure. It's crypto after all. The difference between the concept of what is called a cryptocurrency, an asset, and a central bank digital currency is as follows. Cryptocurrency as a concept is something that you can use as a legal tender to buy and sell goods. Siddharth must be laughing. I think I'm safeguarding, already what he's going to say. So crypto asset, on the other hand, is considered something of value, which also is cryptographically secured. It's on blockchain, and you have tokenized it and things like that. But it's a new kind of asset, which is digital asset. And the value of such asset, like any other asset, like gold, oil, anything, is determined by the buying and selling, the demand and supply of that asset. So that's a crypto asset. You don't use the asset to buy and sell coffee, but you use it to hold it as you would do for other physical assets or other digital assets. Central bank digital currency is a cryptocurrency issued by the central bank, which has the guarantee from the central bank to actually say that I owe you this much amount, along with that, and the central bank takes the liability for that, for that guarantee issued in the market. So that is, in a nutshell, people like me who try to understand all this, I can define. So that is the context, and I would begin the panel discussion, by welcoming Massimo first, connecting his talk with ours now. So Massimo, how do you see the conglomerate of nations adopting or moving towards crypto? So you did describe some of the BIS findings, etc., but I think I would like to ask you a slightly deeper question. What's happening?
Yes, First of all, let me make a disclaimer, which is mandatory. My statements are only my personal opinions and not related to my organizations.
Sure. All the organizers, please note down.
Yes, thank you. Now, I can tell you what my impression is related to United Nations and to some other institutions. Generally speaking, towards the crypto world, there has been, at the beginning, some sort of distance from the main institutions. But then this has been seen as an improvement more and more from general institutions. In fact, if you look at, for instance, United Nations has a cryptocurrency fund, which was created by the UN agency UNICEF, October 2019. The fund collects donations in cryptocurrencies and gives them in the same cryptocurrency. There is no exchange in fiat currency. The crypto fund works with, within another UNICEF venture, the Innovation Fund, which provides seed funding to blockchain-based companies working in developing countries on social products or services. The World Food Program, WFP, also founded the WFP Building Blocks Project, which has aid sent through the Ethereum blockchain to Syria. So as you see, already there is a sort of interest or acceptance from some institutions. On the other side, you can see that some private players and institutional players are a little bit skeptical. For instance, if you see Goldman Sachs has said that Bitcoin is not an asset class for Goldman, no cash flow or dividends or coupon payments, no diversification, is used by criminals. There's a negative stand adopted by Goldman. Also, on the other side, in the same private world, you have seen Tesla, but also Paul Tudor Jones, who adopted the founder of Tudor Investment Corporation, that he says that the crypto assets as they are a hedge against upcoming inflation as a result of central bank money printing after COVID-19. So there are different points of view, and central banks are a bit skeptical. In fact, there is some sort of cracking down in the US, in India, in China, towards the crypto world. My personal impression is that the crypto world can be a very useful tool if we follow the FAT travel rule. As you know, the Financial Action Task Force on Money Laundering is an intergovernmental organization founded in 1989 to combat money laundering and terrorism financing. There is the travel rule according to which you have to, I don't want to go into details to steal time to the other panelists, but in fact, it tracks down where the money comes and where the money goes. This concept is very important because in the issue about money laundering and terrorist financing or fraud can be easily fought. That is why, in my opinion, the crypto world and the cryptocurrencies are here to stay if some regulations are adopted and followed by the main players. Yeah, I can't hear you.
Manish, you're on mute.
I'm so sorry, technology. So the other aspect of that is that we have the legal aspects of how governments can kind of play out with cryptos, and that is where I would like Anirudh to come in. So we had a world view and the psychological governmental view of how they see things. But Anirudh, I would like to know from you, crypto asset versus currency versus CBDC. How does the law see it? What can be allowed, what can be not, what can definitely be allowed and definitely not be allowed?
Sure, Manish. Thanks for that. So before I get into how the law sees, kind of tries to make a distinction between these three, and I don't think the law, particularly in India, but generally there are we do not have evolved frameworks, in law for looking at some of these things. But let me just start from a conceptual point, kind of standpoint first. I would probably even slightly disagree with the way you kind of classified or explained crypto assets and cryptocurrencies. The way I see it is, crypto assets is the larger universe, right? And cryptocurrency really is, to my mind, a misnomer. I'm not the first person to say this. I think a lot of people hold this view very strongly. But the use of so-called cryptocurrencies as a currency was really, kind of one use case, which is kind of the most well-known use case because of obviously the popularity of Bitcoin, and that's the idea which has caught everybody's attention, right? But really there are thousands of other applications that are being built, and when we talk of something as a cryptocurrency, we try and we sort of confuse that larger point somewhat. So ideally, I would like legal frameworks to kind of look at this thing as crypto assets, not as cryptocurrencies. I think that misnomer causes a lot of confusion. But what is a CBDC? As I think I fully agree with the way you explained it as well. CBDC is nothing but a crypto asset which is issued by a sovereign or by a third party. It could be a bank, but backed by a sovereign, right? Or it has the backing of a sovereign, and it serves the purpose of a currency. Typically, that's the intended use case, right? So I think the concept of a CBDC is again another subclass of a subset of the larger kind of crypto asset universe, so to say, and it has a very limited kind of use case, right? So that's the way I would like to describe these three.
So the counter question is, tell me, legally speaking, let's say everything is a crypto asset, and say CBDC, the regulators can make the laws for themselves. So really they are the sovereign and they are the law. So, but crypto assets, can the governments really curb them? Let's say if for the benefit of the audience in a democracy like ours, where we have certain rights, so can the governments really go ahead and curb them, or is it ultra vires?
Yeah, so interestingly, if India were to choose to go down this path, we would be sharing the stage with countries like Algeria, Bolivia, China to a certain extent, Venezuela, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, right? So countries we typically, I would say, do not really share constitutional values with. From a constitutional law standpoint, yes, I mean, this was something which was in challenge before the Supreme Court when this battle was being fought out, and will remain to be. I think it is definitely an infringement of my right to trade, my may I say even my right to expression, my right to hold property. So it is definitely that, and any law that seeks to curb that right has to be proportionate to the risks that this or the concerns that it is seeking to address, right? So. And the point there is that if the government is concerned about, just to take one example, is concerned about money laundering, then there are ways to address money laundering which may be less intrusive than a complete ban, right? Like, for example, you enforce anti-money laundering, policies, etc., which is done with almost every financial asset class today. So I think there are less intrusive ways to regulate, and there is enough precedent around the world. If you look at countries like Switzerland, Singapore, these are the more progressive jurisdictions. A lot of European countries, the US, certain states have taken have set precedent. So there are ways to regulate, which I believe is a better solution than banning, which likely is going to be counterproductive. You cannot really, I mean, I really just need a computer and the internet to hold.
No. So you're not answering the question. So you are the one who actually challenged the RBI order and got it in favor of the ones who are smiling in the panel. So I wanted to know from you the more incisive point, being that is it a very strong case probably that legally this may not be attainable solution because of the various things that you talked about? Yes or no? One line answer.
Well.
See, there are a lot of people watching this and a lot of people confused. So they need to hear from you that, you guys are covered.
yes, there's a very strong constitutional law argument here. However, the practicality of it cannot be ignored, right? Once your parliament has made a law, the courts I mean, one of the key challenges in the prior the writ petition that we had just now was that, well, the RBI circular was not backed by a law determining legality of cryptocurrencies to begin with. So if the parliament has not decided, and there was deliberation going on by committees, etc., when the parliament itself or the committee has not decided on the legality, how is it that the RBI is jumping the gun and making a law imposing a ban? Now, if that situation were to change, where the parliament were to deliberate and introduce, and I hope they deliberate because that's seemingly not on the cards, which is the larger problem, I think. But if they were to deliberate and pass a law making the use of cryptocurrencies illegal, I think definitely it becomes a harder, it's a more uphill battle now to kind of for the court, before the court.
All right. So as we move forward, I would assume that as crypto assets, we will be able to save the investment opportunity for all of us. And with that assumption, the whole panel discussion moves. So now, Ajit, please don't go away. I know you are angry. But how do you? So explain me something. How do we understand? Should we buy, Ethereum, Bitcoin, Binance, or what? So when you go to the investment worlds, which so-called are more structured, and I say that because there is a lot of speculative element running behind fundamental analysis. I would say that's my viewpoint. With all due regrets. How do we understand and decipher an investment choice between cryptos? Let's say these are assets and these are now serious assets and it should be part of a serious asset allocation portfolio. How do we look forward?
So, you said, let's say these are serious assets. Let's not just say that, let's also believe that, right? Because until we do that, this question becomes a little hypothetical. Now, Manish, should we buy gold or should we buy silver? If my mere objective is capital appreciation, how about that? Gold or silver? Basically, the kind of question you're asking, very valid, as in I would want to know whether I should buy gold or silver, comes down to that. Here are one or two very interesting ways in which I can directly answer that question. The first part is that if we are talking of a distributed public blockchain and a token that powers it, such as Bitcoin, and then there are so many others, and we have to decide who is the winner, the winner can be decided on two parameters. One would be, since there's a market price associated with these tokens, which one would gain the most, and second would be in which one will gain the maximum adoption in terms of distributed ownership, etc. While these two might seem different, one might seem an economic phenomena and one might seem a phenomenon of markets, but just like economics and markets are related to each other, the fact is that until there is significant adoption of any crypto asset for the purpose it was intended or for some other purpose that evolves, the fact is that its price increase or inflation will only be limited to a certain period of time. So for instance, if you were to look at the top 10 crypto assets in terms of market capitalization, while Bitcoin has always been number one with somewhere between 50 to 75% of market cap, today it is about 65, and ETH has always been number two. But right from number 3 to number 10, the list keeps changing. Especially if you look at 6 to 10, the list almost revamps every few weeks and months. And this has to be seen in the context of the fact that if I include every minor token there is, but only see the active tokens, not tokens that existed once upon a time and have ceased to exist, the number is in the excess of 8,000 today. And we are not even able to maintain stability in adoption for the top 5 and certainly not for the top 10. What this does is that for the person who is not trying to just buy today, sell tomorrow, or buy today and sell today plus 1 minute, that means not the wild trader. If anybody is thinking of this as an investment, a key criteria has to be adoption. And I think that is where first and foremost, Bitcoin definitely meets the requirement of all of these commercially traded investment grade crypto assets. Other than this, if you want to explore, I think that the logic of choosing Bitcoin, which is the granddaddy of it all, versus some of the lesser known coins, maybe something which has a market cap rank number 1000 or something much less, I think that the logic becomes similar to when you invest in the stock market and you have to decide in the Indian context whether you want to invest in TCS, HDFC Bank, Reliance, which will be in the top few market caps, and you want to invest in penny stock. And the characteristics are similar, namely, it is easily conceivable that the penny stock might give a dramatic growth, such as 100% in a few days, or 1,000% in a month, and those kind of returns because of very low trading volume, etc. At the same time, the penny stock often ends up in a negative territory or even getting burnt out and getting delisted. The same is true with crypto, that while you might take a fundamental view, and I'm not getting to the technical because technical could be a bunch of people trying to inflate a very thinly traded currency, which is a meaningless distraction to our conversation. Hence, when we look at a fundamental view, every token that came into the market had a stated objective as to what is the purpose of this token. Interestingly, barring, I would say, a lot of objectives of these tokens have changed over time. Right? I think what they came for and what they eventually became changed over time. So if you believe that a certain token which might have a lower market capitalization is on a threshold of two factors. Number one, rapid adoption compared to where it is today. And number two, a furthering of its use case, then that could be a good token to buy. If, however, you have no such belief, but you want to take an exposure to crypto assets, then probably going with the granddaddy such as Bitcoin might give you a better and more stable outlook.
So adoption and utility, in a nutshell, is what makes you. And other than that, liquidity is what you are looking at, market liquidity. So that's a very good insight because not many people didn't have that. So a good perspective. Siddharth, now some exchange business, please. So why do people come to your exchange? And people are driving, going, coming and buying. In fact, I was talking to a wealth manager and I have a hard sell talking about fractional ownership and all that. And then he told me that, sometimes things investors don't, go by rational. Sometimes it becomes a religion and everybody has to have a crypto. On that note, I have to ask you some questions. Why do people come to your exchange? What do you think people are coming for? What are they seeking? And the difficult one, do they really understand what they are buying?
All right. So I would probably break this into a few more parts. So there are obviously people who just know about Bitcoin and just want to jump onto the game. But what people don't know about is there are people or there are funds, there are companies, corporates. In fact, right after the COVID-19 drop that we saw a lot of corporates also onboarding, trying to manage their treasury with bit of Bitcoin or bit of cryptocurrency. I don't know exactly what all they buy, but I've seen those trends coming in. And that is them who have done their research, who know what is this. Probably they have already invested in gold or other commodities for all we know. So I see this trend happening, right? And there are the other people who have probably come to know from the TV or maybe friends of friends, where everybody's talking about, hey, Bitcoin is amazing, it's going up. If you put 100 rupees right now, it becomes $500 in like a month or two. And that's another attraction. That's another trigger for people to sign up, right? And what happens is in these processes, people start researching about Bitcoin. Not everybody is blind about just putting their money in. They start researching about Bitcoin, and you'll see during these times you will see maximum search for what is Bitcoin overall, even on Google, right? Like people start watching these videos, they start reading these articles. Even if you see that everybody's trying to understand, and there's a lot of curiosity around what to understand this, and that's amazing because a lot of people get convinced, a lot of people don't get convinced. The folks who get convinced, when Elon Musk tweeting about it, obviously a lot more janta got convinced about this, but and they're probably making this move to having an asset as a class.
Tell me the truth. So tell me really why people are coming there.
Yeah. So I mean, bottom line is the price movement that is happening right now. Like I said, from a corporate point of view, it is probably hedging against the inflation that is being subjected, and they're probably even hedging it against other assets. From a retail perspective, it probably is not hedging, but it is more about increasing their portfolio, right? And today, if you see what's the most highest performing asset, that your crypto assets are something that is the highest performing.
So is it because there's a party in town and I need to be there?
Nobody wants to.
And even Elon Musk is going.
Yeah. I mean, the FOMO kicks in, right? So the party is happening, and I'm not part of that, right? So that happens for sure.
I truly echo all the sentiments from the very serious ones like Massimo, trying to talk from the institutional side to to what was explained by Anirudh and and Ajit on how to choose portfolio and things like that. What I want to say to the organizers is this needs more education, probably.
Right.
Not in the same thing. This needs more education. There is a mass movement towards this, and we need to spread the right word, probably in the parliament if we can. So thank you very much. Now coming to the traditional world colliding with this, so Sridhar, from the traditional banker perspective, from banking point of view, do you think CBDCs, like Massimo earlier explained, there are two ways to do CBDC. One is, the RBI does the wholesale part, and the banks do issuances of the CBDCs at their own end. Like in Hong Kong and some jurisdictions, the banks issue the currency notes, etc. So something like that. Do you think CBDC should be issued by banks, and the regulator being the wholesale blockchain, or do you think it should be direct CBDC? And when I'm talking to you, I'm aware that you look at it from risk management perspective. So so coming back to CBDC and coming back to your banker's jacket, how do you see it?
Yeah, thanks. I think the question is really a little early maybe at this point of time, because we're still debating what are the contours of the CBDC right now, right? Because we are at the start of evolution, I would say, at least in terms of CBDC, it might make sense that a central authority issues it, and then banks play their part. And over a period of time, you graduate to a situation where banks can issue
the reverse you were suggesting.
Yeah, I would suggest that is how it starts. That is a bit of gradualism, maybe not very popular these days, but then I would say that is a way of starting something in a controlled environment. And of course, there's going to be a regulator. In this country, we are fond of regulators, so we will have a regulator for these things. And but the way we are evolving here, I think there are lots of gaps in understanding. You asked this wonderful question about why do people invest, right? But then today, if banks were asked to handle these things, do they know how to handle this? They don't really, right? Because we have used the blockchain technology to do a number of POCs and maybe a few things in production actually, such as supply chain and cross-border payments. Today, there's been this announcement, right? A bunch of banks working along with payment companies. And so we are actually getting into what is the actual use of blockchain technology, really to move to a stage where we say a CBDC is a crying need today. I think in this country, because we first go from the fellow who's crying first, we address that, right? So I think that is something that we are not there maybe. There are a lot of research to be done, which is the better option.
Okay.
Whether it is the banks issuing it, we have a bunch of banks. Who do you allow them to issue? Who do you allow to issue rather, right? The top ones or everyone. And what do banks need to have if they need to issue? So I would rather think the balance at this stage of evolution is for a central issuer. Of course, the entire ecosystem uses it.
All right, thank you. So Ajit, coming back to you, so I will keep coming back to you for fundamental understandings. So do you think between, the cryptocurrency or central bank cryptocurrency, as Anirudh said, I need to correct that only guy who can issue the cryptocurrency is central bank, and therefore rest everyone is legally protected. No, you didn't say that, but I'm quoting myself. So, what will be the cryptocurrency that we can actually use? How do you see that? Will it be and use, when I said not crypto asset use, asset is one use. What is the cryptocurrency that we will use? Either it will be central bank, or you see a hybrid model. See, I know a thing or two, so I'm asking you the right question.
Actually, very good question. See, what has happened is, if I will just quickly in 30 seconds run through the imperatives of money management. 1,000 years ago, barter system. I don't know whether it was literally 1,000 years ago, long time ago, barter system, inefficiency leading to various forms of money up to fiat currency, which came recently, removed the gold standard. That is where we are. If you think about it, in many senses of the term, the barter system was the most real way of transaction, except highly inefficient, right? The advantage of money is that it does not necessarily give you the perception of exchanging value, but its efficiency as a medium of exchange, as a store of value, as a unit of account. However, when the entire digital or electronic or connectivity world changes, we can once again explore that wasn't there a better way to do it? For example, can't we have one asset which is a store of value and another asset which is a medium of exchange? These are two fundamental pillars of money, right? The third one being unit of account. So it is conceivable that that might be the case, which earlier was inefficient because we didn't live in a digitized world, right? I personally feel that central bankers will move to some form of CBDC, and the motivation, whether this motivation will be fulfilled or not, remains to be seen, but the motivation would be some amount of disintermediation. As Massimo talked about the fact that the purpose of banks is no longer as a place to invest money because we are at a negative interest rate. So really it is facilitation of transactions that banks do. And if that can be done on a public blockchain, a central bank blockchain, you don't need banks at all for that purpose. So I think that serves a very good medium of exchange. Crypto assets, as we call them, will Bitcoin be used to buy coffee? Will Ethereum be used to buy coffee? Well, to some extent it has happened, but it is very, very minimal. I completely agree that in a hyper-inflating asset price of Bitcoin, it does not make sense for me to spend it on coffee because I just held it. Then 2 months later, I could buy 2 coffees with it. And 2 years later, I could buy 10 coffees with it. So I should not buy coffee with it. So at this point of time,
we have a situation coming up where we say that I have 5 Ethereum, 5 XYZ and 5 Bitcoins. And therefore today, my best payment method is the XYZ because the Bitcoin is more dearer to me. And people might be paying, and this is something that I just imagined, people might be having a bouquet of assets, like everybody has their own, and they may use these assets in the classical barter way to pay from the cheapest of the ones that the other guy is willing to accept.
Yeah. I mean, that's usually how the currency is inflationary.
Hey, let me just tell you one very interesting thing. So it is not cheapest; it is the most inflationary one. For example,
correct.
I'm sorry to take your point, but one quick thing: when we say that all assets, whether it's stocks, real estate, gold, inflate over time, I want to view it differently and say actually that's not the case. It is a fiat currency that deflates over time. So whatever is the most deflating asset, which today is fiat currency of the things we are discussing, should be the one that you expend. And whatever is the most inflationary one, which increases in value, should be the one that you keep. Sorry, Siddharth, please go ahead.
I mean, it's just other side of the coin, how you see it. Like in general, currency is inflationary in nature. That is why you don't want to keep it; you want to spend it out, right? And exactly what you said. And inflationary. If you are holding on to gold, you would never want to let go of that because it's always going to go up, and that is bad for the economy because economy needs more transaction and a move of value from one place to other, and that's where currency plays in. So currency playing as an transaction. For the purpose of transaction, even I don't see that happening because ultimately it will become deflationary and people will stop using that for transactions.
Yeah, so my mind is going bonkers in terms of what it can do to lending, and what it can do to asset-based lending and how we will understand assets and things like that. This is This is all subject to if Anirudh tells me that don't worry, things are there to stay. Anirudh, again, one more comment on that, because we have heard about all of this. Do you think that we will be living, at least, India is not on any either extremes. We are not North Korea, and we are not probably to that extent. We have Supnendu coming in, as progressive as Supnendu and Singapore, we would say. So, do you think we will go to the North Korean side?
Well, there's definitely a fair bit of fear mongering. I mean, it's difficult to say, but really, if the see, one is that none of us have really seen the draft bill, right? Which is it's not been made public yet. And if one has to, I mean, if it takes the shape of the draft bill that was issued in 2019 by the Interministerial Committee, then yes, it does look quite a, it's a depressing situation. But hopefully, I mean, that will not be the case.
All right. So, one again, Sridhar, 1 minute, I would like to understand from you. So, about what are the risks that you see if a digital currency is issued in whatever form by banks or RBI? If people like us have digital currency, what do you see the risk to the system? And nobody has done it at scale. So I'm just trying to ask an imaginary question. We don't even know the real risks. So what are the risks that you see that we need to, foresee, mitigate, and manage? So why I give you the background is I was talking to one of the secretaries probably a couple of years back. And one of the risks and this was when India had the first panel on cryptocurrency created, and he confided in a private meeting that one of the risks that they foresee is inflation, because now nobody is controlling the flow of money. Suddenly the money is there in people's hand and nobody really knows how things are going to span out. Now with that background, I mean, this is what he shared. Probably you from the banking side may be seeing one or two more risks because we have a cash equivalent now.
So that's an excellent question. Actually, if I go back to my previous role, where we were dealing with bonds and then interest rates and all that, central banks control money supply. The objectives are growth and inflation control, right? That is the equation there. Now, if a part of cash is in the form of CBDC, and now that is lying outside the central bank's purview, it's lying outside of that, then you have two components to cash now. One, which is the sovereign currency, which is in the form of rupee notes or money in bank accounts, right? In savings account. And then other, which is in the form of CBDC. You need to aggregate both in order to understand what is the impact of a growth of the aggregate on growth or inflation. Point number one. Point number two, we still do not know how CBDC would behave in terms of its use in exchange, because the extent of multiplying that happens with what the Reserve Bank or the government issues is what determines the extent of liquidity that flows into the system, right? So we do not know. We will know in some time. So you need to ponder about these things when you make those decisions on interest rates in the Monetary Policy Committee. There is other impact, which is about banks lend more than what they have by using this fractional system, right? I keep a certain amount of money with the central bank. The central bank says, okay, you are safe now. You can go ahead and lend the rest of the money. Some guys come and again put deposit. Again, I keep a percentage. I go and give out this money. So whenever a depositor comes and asks for money, the Reserve Bank, the central bank, believes that this amount of reserves maintained is taking care of the risk. Now, if we are in a situation where we are going to have this CBDC, what about the reserve requirements for the CBDC, right? And who will do it? If banks are not holders of the CBDC, someone else is. So how does that work? There is another thing which is actually very basic stuff, which is about accounting of transactions in a bank. regardless of what currency that a bank deals in, ultimately everything is reflected in its mother currency, which is the base currency, which is rupees. So eventually for the CBDCs that are around, which a bank will handle, it needs to convert that into rupees as well. Now, presumably because this is issued by the central bank of the country, let us presume it is 1 CBDC equals 1 rupee. You do that, but you need to complete your processing and measure the risk at all times. What is it that is flowing through your system? So you need your accounting systems, which is actually your core banking and other systems, the ability to track all that. The final thing is about the money laundering piece. There is an issue of CBDC by a central authority, fine, but the transactions using the CBDC are not flowing through the banking system. They're flowing through some other settlement system. I'm just using a word there. Who tracks the usage of the CBDC there? It's not about the issue, right? As it moves forward, are we able to track who's using it?
Yeah, so the answer that techies will give is AI.
Yeah, I know there are enough things to give, and I'm not a techie. I won't be able to challenge them. But the point I'm making is, how do we track this? That mechanism needs to be built. You asked about risk. I'm possibly talking about enablement and linking them to the risks where it originates.
Thank you, Sridhar. Now I would like to end the panel with a last note from Massimo about what are some of the key recommendations. Now you have spent some time with Nation of Nations, etc. So what are some of the key recommendations you would like to give to any government considering considering cryptos in general, whether to allow, not allow? That is one step, and number two is issuing or recognizing CBDCs. What are some of the 2-3 things that you can share as learnings?
Yeah, first of all, I want to point out one issue which is has been slightly mentioned, and that is that the switch from the interest of institutional investors, the interest in Bitcoins has led to an increase in interest in the larger cryptocurrency ecosystem, which is not led by retail investors only, but and speculation as it was in the past, but by financial institutions such as banks and hedge funds, as they need to have an exposure to cryptocurrency in case these ones become the standard and generally accepted tokens in 2021. So this is an important issue because crypto has gone more institutional to some extent. This interest gives us an idea why there is such a big appreciation of Bitcoin, what's happened over the last few months. Having said that, I think governments are not against cryptocurrencies, but they are concerned with the illegal use of them. That's why, as I said before, there are some tools that can be used, like the travel rule, which effectively tracks down who's buying the cryptos, Bitcoins, Ethereum, or whatever, and so that you can see where the money flows, comes and goes. And this is quite important for money laundering purposes as well, and for keeping track of that. Now, coming back to CBDCs, I think they have a great positive impact for consumers, and also it's a wake-up call for the banking system. Why? Because banks have traditionally been intermediaries which took advantage of their position, taking out deposits, giving out loans, but effectively, especially in a low interest rate environment, you can see that this what's causing is that they take advantage of low interest rates and make up profits out of taking no risks to some extent. That is why CBDCs gives an incentive to banks to be more active and to fight for their deposits. This is good for efficiency of the financial system. I know that, of course, banks might be a little bit afraid of that, but this is the way forward. No, there is no way of stopping it. Now,
I think in the interest of time, I think I would like to thank everyone. And I'm happy we could do a very live, energetic panel. Please smile, all the guests, and wave to all the audience, which we can't see, and thank you very much. I hope to the organizers, that we have caught up with time and we are leaving on time honorably. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you, Manish, for that wonderful moderation. And
Thanks,
thank you
guys.
to all the other panelists for joining us and sharing their thoughts on this platform. I think I can vouch for everybody that we have been able to impart a lot of clarity on a lot of major issues regarding Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies with respect to law and CBDCs. And hopefully we have also got a lot of points to ponder, and the government has got a lot of points to ponder over. Thank you so much for joining in. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great.
Thanks, guys.
Moving on.
Thanks.
Next up, we have two wonderful gentlemen from the fintech world who are going to provide a worldview of cryptocurrencies and the evolution of money. We have Swapnendu Mohanty, Chief Fintech Officer at Monetary Authority of Singapore, who is a well-known global innovation strategist and provider of regulatory leadership in fintech. He'll be joined in a fireside chat by Malik Khan Kotadia, co-founder and global board chairman at Global Impact Fintech Forum, and an adjunct professor for fintech at the Asian Institute of Management, Philippines. These gentlemen will be discussing the evolution of digital money and how the world is coming to terms with it. Over to you.
Thank you, Chiranjeevi. You are able to see and hear me clearly?
Yes, I am. I'm able to see both of you clearly and hear you. Thank you.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you for that. And it was a great panel before this. So Manish and the panelists, thank you for setting the context for this particular discussion. Ladies and gentlemen, we are slightly more than halfway through this day, and we've covered quite a few points. But now, as the previous speaker said, we are going to look at the more macro global picture. And to discuss that, it is my great pleasure to host this fireside chat with one of the best, one of the most well-known regulators and one of the leading voices when it comes to fintech and innovation in the region, and someone whom I've had the pleasure of knowing for many years before his current avatar as a regulator from our private sector days as a colleague. So please join me in welcoming Swapnendu. Swapnendu, it's a pleasure to host another panel with you again. Thank you for joining us.
Good to see you, Malik. Long time, but you have picked up some white hair, I can see.
I thank you. I will chat more with you offline. I just stopped coloring my hair, gone natural.
Okay, good thing to do.
Thank you. So, Swapnendu, there are a lot of things I want to cover, and unfortunately, we have only 30 minutes. So I'll probably do some rapid fire stuff, and we'll just skip the introductions because I don't think you need any introductions.
Let's do that.
So let's start with the basics and the key core or the foundational question. How do you see CBDCs? And the reason why I ask is, while we had a wonderful panel before this, there are just so many ideas and so much information out there when it comes to CBDCs and what it represents. Buzzwords like wholesale, retail, DVP, RTGS rails, synthetic, programmable money, and I'm sure there are many other jargons out there.
Yes.
So who better than you to try and A, simplify it, and B, distill it into its essence?
Sure. Well, I think the previous panel did dealt on very important aspect of looking at the micro picture. And I think the audience will stand to have a better context if they have heard that piece. Well, my job in this 30 minutes is to just give you from where I stand in terms of the macro picture of where we see this going. Well, you just put some long range of acronyms in Word. We'll not go there. But before we get to CBDC as a medium of exchange or store value, let's take a step back and understand the motivation from a central bank why we are doing, and that can help to unwind some of the interest we have on the central bank digital currency, broadly speaking. For many years, central bank have struggled, especially when it comes to cross-border payments. And the second challenge is still an unfulfilled problem in terms of solving it. Still, many large countries where large population, distant population, still inclusion is a challenge, and ability to send and transact for many far-flung countries as towns and cities is still a challenge to overcome. Now, when we started looking at CBDC, we looked at a whole range of payment innovation. Let's start with that before we come to currency. And what we saw over the last 3 to 4 years, there are three big things which came out. First thing, with this ability of using CBDC, improve our cross-border payments, our ability to transact cross-border, because that's the unsolved challenge in my mind, given examples from India, Singapore, where the domestic payment network has largely made payment as a 2-3 click process with zero cost. And I still don't understand why you need a retail CBDC in that context. Because if the cost of sending money is zero for an account-to-account transfer and it takes a couple of clicks, it is simple, intuitive. Why do you need that? Second, is there any better way to think about the way we integrate payment versus business processes? Having a programmable money allows you to incorporate some business controls on the payment line, which means when I pay to you, the goods and services I promised in the part of the transaction, can it be clearly linked so that both the process gets integrated to a single process? Today, when you pay each other and the goods and services we exchange are two different processes. Can we bring it together by creating a programmable money? And given I'm using this fancy word again, the programmable money, there are also a discussion, especially during COVID-19, when you have to inject a lot of grant subsidies or government direct benefit transfers. Is there any way to make the money program to a certain extent that it can be only used for XYZ when you're giving direct benefit transfer? So there are these 2 or 3 big, heavy value into the system, which as CBDC potentially can bring. I think that's the driver behind why we are dealing with this CBDC. Now, this is what we all call payment innovation, and they relate to better means by using money as a medium of exchange on how they're used to transact to each other. Now, the question on CBDC, I would view this question as if we agree that, and we should agree that this payment innovation I just spoke are useful. Now, the question is, would it be the appropriate party to issue this digital currencies? Who would be the right party? Is it private sector or it is the central bank? Who should issue that CBDC which will facilitate this payment innovation? We have seen in the market, there's a whole set of cryptocurrencies and stable coins out there, and they have gained traction, but still much more to do there. And still trust is a big issue there. And can the cryptocurrencies and stable coins be used to drive such payment innovation? Now, broadly speaking, would a central bank issue a digital currency and then power this innovation? Probably yes. We have done our own experiment in Singapore. We have done a lot of partnership with other central bank, and we have tested models that where can a central bank issued currency can power this last mile payment challenges, especially cross-border payments. I think there was a debate before this on the panel talking about who should issue the money. Should the money issued by the central bank or the commercial bank? I think the jury is still out there, and there are pros and cons in both sides. So for me, the way I would just summarize the situation today is that private sector engagement is critical. They should focus on the payment innovation part, the DLT, the how to use CBDC to drive this innovation, and the central bank should continue to focus on whether they should issue the currencies or should they issue the currency directly to the network. Can be a multi-currency network. So there are a whole set of infrastructure partnership with central bank has to intervene when they issue such currencies. So I hope that this year, or at least next year, what you will see globally, a production grade use case where a wholesale CBDC is being issued by central bank or in partnership with the commercial bank, and they're facilitating three things: helping the settlement process faster, helping to move cross-border payment almost instantly, and third, can that be a smart move of integrating with digital ID and creating a better and a faster AML KYC process, as that is the biggest challenge of when it comes to cross-border payment, and that creates the delay in getting money from A point to B point. So this is where we see the progress and where we think we'll go forward with this whole CBDC in particular issued by a central bank or via a commercial bank.
Thank you, Swapnendra. You've covered many points that I had actually broken down into about 4 or 5 distinct questions. So you've given me many.
Let's open up the question.
Many paths to segue. So let me, before I jump into some of those questions, let me slightly take a detour. And one of the points that you mentioned, very relevant. I've heard this from other panelists in previous panels that I've moderated as well, about using the power of smart contracts, as I interpreted, to kind of sync up business processes and make them more efficient. And while I think the logic of that and the rationale of that is unassailable and makes a lot of sense, I just want to quote another fellow panelist of mine, someone I'm sure whom you've shared many panels with, Professor David Lee. He is often fond of saying that DLT or blockchain is a solution for trustless transactions. It's not the best solution for efficiency management. For that, your existing database solution is much more efficient. So, I mean, he always says, don't try and look at blockchain as a solution to efficiency problem. Any particular note on that, since you specifically referred to that point?
I think that argument is absolutely valid on a standalone DLT technology standpoint. Here I'm arguing my case saying that when you're merging a business process and encoding inside a currency or creating a smart contract, when you build it together, you need a currency which is trusted, which is backed by the central bank, and perhaps as a starting point that will make it more efficient. So still we need a medium of exchange to execute that business process. So I'm not arguing the case of whether a decentralized database or a centralized database is an efficient versus not efficient. I'm arguing my case saying that can the business process be programmed into the money, and who issues that money? I think that's the big question here.
Thank you. So I think those are two key points. One is who underwrites or issues that money and the trust factor that you rightly pointed out, and then syncing of business processes for not just efficiency, but I guess transparency and a more seamless ecosystem as well. And
also integrating to the existing payment rails.
Correct.
You still need the current payment rails to operate. It's not something will operate with a new brand new infrastructure. So, or there's a lot of undertaking to do if you to do that way. Existing infrastructure riding on that.
So thank you for that, Swapnendra. That's a great point, and that's actually a segue to my next question. Digital payments have been around for a while now. They are no longer novelties or even something which is niche. It's kind of now becoming more and more center of plate, and especially I think in 2020 was a tipping point year. We saw in country after country, especially emerging countries, including the Philippines, where I am currently based, Indonesia, India, you see everywhere. I think from our time in the private sector, at least when I was trying to push digital payments incrementally 10%, 15% every year, it's kind of leapfrogged by 5 years. And for the benefit of our audience, I'll just share a couple of, maybe snippets. One is if you see, let's say prompt pay from Thailand, from the Bank of Thailand and the national QR system, it's clocking over 300 million transactions. UPI, if I'm not mistaken, and perhaps my Manish and team can, correct if I have slightly misread the numbers, but I think it crossed 2 billion transactions recently. China, I think we all know, between the duopoly of WeChat and Alipay, we are talking about nearly $40 trillion. So as you rightly said, there is an existing payment trail, and it's now not only something which has been around for a while, but it's now adopted quite widely by existing users. So it brings us back to the same question that if you already have a system where the central bank is issuing money through commercial banks, and the last leg of the payment transactions, whether through QR codes or biometrics or even simple peer-to-peer or pay now, as we have in Singapore through mobile numbers, we have various frictionless, seamless payment systems. So what incrementally is the benefit versus the cost? What is the trade-off when you say that this will get plugged into the existing rails, and we know the existing rails work just fine in country after country?
Sure.
What would be the incremental benefit, and what are the trade-offs between introducing CBDC to plug into these rails versus the existing system, which works just fine,
Sure.
many would argue?
Well, it's a complex topic, and I myself have argued it, saying that, as you said, Pay now has crossed 5 billion a month in Singapore, where ability to pay each other has become almost like a costless and seamless transaction in many sense. There's no clear argument why a retail sector will be thinking about a retail CBDC in that sense. And what does it mean the cryptocurrency which is out there, what value they play, other than being purely speculative and in many ways. I don't want to be pompous here, but if I can say that the first country which will actually going to connect the domestic faster payment system to another country's payment system will be Singapore and Thailand. And we're expected to go live this year, last week of April. And this is cross-border transfers by just connecting respective domestic payment system. You would assume that as both the countries have built remarkable public infrastructure in the domestic sector, just by connecting, life is going to be easy. We have achieved every possible nirvana in the space of cross-border payment. I'm expecting my cross-border transfer to this troop by connecting these two networks should drop from the days, or a couple of days nowadays we do, to less than 5 minutes, just by traditional rail connectivity. So yeah, I'm absolutely spot on. Purely just making life better by connecting to domestic payment system, you get there. You get to less than 5 minutes by just doing that piece of work, which is no more a theory, is going to happen starting April, end of April. Now the question for me is that, do I still need a wholesale CBDC? My argument is absolutely yes, because behind this cross-border payment, there are a lot of traditional processes still running. FX settlement, AML KYC screenings, multi-ledger settlement. There's a whole set of processes still running, which has not, while the speed has reduced, but the cost has not gone away. It's still the cost which is running using traditional processes. What we're trying to examine, can the wholesale CBDC with a much more smarter way to build reconciliation ledgers, can that solve that backend cost structure, which can then reduce the cost of domestic transfer, cross-border transfer for small value? I think that's the place where we want to go with the wholesale CBDC. That's one way to look at. Other example of why we still need wholesale CBDC is an example which is only in Asia. It is available globally. It is in Cambodia. While everybody talks about intellectually about CBDC, crypto, the country which has truly implemented a national infrastructure, runs on a DLT construct, is Cambodia. So the national infrastructure project called Bakong.
Bakong, right? Yeah. Yes. Thank you.
The question is, why did they go after Bakong? Strangely, my dear friend, when I spoke to her, she said that I wanted to build a faster payment system. I went and put a tender. It was too costly for us to build a faster payment system for us. So she and her team decided to leapfrog a traditional faster payments rails like UPI, fast payment in Singapore and other market by just building a new construct on using CBDC to create a from a real-time gross settlement system. So Bakong shows how technology, CBDC can be brought together to leapfrog in a country where a domestic rails don't exist today, as many of the countries I just cited have. So they can leapfrog in a cheaper way to build a domestic payment system using such technology. So which means that countries who don't have such existing rails will leapfrog, and hopefully Bakong becomes a benchmark template for them to go to that system. And there will be some point in time we have to find a way to interoperate these systems across the border. Third example is Riksbank e-Krona project. They were looking for a different problem. They were trying to solve their physical cash usage going dramatically down, and they wanted to provide an access to central bank liability. And they started a project called e-Krona. Again, completely different drivers, and that was an issue where they want to have an alternate or provide an access to central bank liability in a digital form, just to get over the dropping cash usage in Sweden. Fifth example, in China. Why China is thinking and expanding and giving and putting a lot of retail currencies in the market today in China, because they want to build an ecosystem outside the Alipay WeChat construct. And they're also looking at opportunity to do cross-border for tourists carrying the eRMB. So my summary reaction to your question is that some countries are looking this as a defensive measure. Some countries are looking this to preserve their monetary sovereignty, and others are looking to leapfrog constraints they have so that they can build, get into a modern payment system faster in a cheaper way.
Thank you, Swapnendu. And again, you've covered quite a few points in a single answer, so appreciate that. One thing that you, and thanks for sharing those various use cases as well. I'm sure our audience will find it quite useful and something that they can compare and contrast with. One thing that you said, kind of struck with me, and it's something we've seen time and time again in the last decade. Technology has become such a blessing now that countries which did not have any kind of an infrastructure are just able to leapfrog. So rather than going the organic route, and in fact, the erstwhile leaders are now becoming laggards for exactly this reason. So I think you've hit the nail on the head on that one.
Nobody imagined Cambodia will be the only country, first country. I think somebody said Bahamas or somewhere there in West Indies have. But to me, a truly modern day retail payment system running on a CBDC DLT is Cambodia.
Thank you for pointing that out, and I'm sure our friends at the National Bank of Cambodia will be happy to hear your endorsement. Now that you've given us multiple use cases from all the way from Sweden to Cambodia to China, I wanted to ask you some of these, but you said that. In the interest of time, let me jump straight away into something which has been MAS's baby and your group's baby, specifically Project Ubin, or rather Ubin, no longer a project, something that most of us here would be familiar with, but perhaps not as well versed with or plugged into. So please, enlighten our audience on Ubin phases 1 to 5. And if I can ask you from a personal perspective, if you're comfortable answering that, Swapnendu, what part of that has been the most gratifying to you personally, and why of that journey?
Well, Ubin was our own little way of understanding DLT cryptocurrency, because when we started from a regulatory standpoint, and I have always, in my 5 years as a regulator, as a public policymaker, I always believe that instead of creating paper to understand what the future lies, do experiment and fast track your understanding of where the future is going to. So we have embraced this culture of experimentation as a way to build new policies. And in that spirit, we started Project Ubin, where we thought, let's get a real use case, which is our own payment system, and start experimenting and understanding the fundamental of what is a cryptocurrency, what is this digital currency, what is DLT, how do we bring together, how do we interact with other central banks. So the whole set of discovery and our own self-learning was created. We also brought the industry to the play. So the private sector also get engaged in the process. There are many, I would say, positive network effect of that project. We created a lot of blockchain companies in Singapore. Singapore also generated a lot of knowledge base in this process. So there are other benefit of Ubin. But really, the most gratifying part from my own takeaway from Project Ubin has that we promised that we'll stop experiment once we understand all the fundamentals of this whole space. And I've been called out not in a positive sense when I said last year, I think we should stop doing experiment in this space and let's get into real production activity, because this deluge of experiment happening throughout the world with POCs is just fatigue for me. And we decided to stop it because we have done the whole phase 1 to phase 5. We understood the underlying issues and opportunities. And what is happening now, we're actually moving to the stage of commercialization. And it's not we are developing the commercial part. It is the private sector which is coming together, which is taking the learning out of Ubin. And I don't want to run ahead of JP Morgan and DBS and Temasek, because they're bringing together their a kind of a commercial network for a live usage on back of the Ubin learning, which we expect to see live transaction this year. I think when that happens, it will be truly gratifying for me from an end point, because sometimes you stop your work at a POC and there's nothing beyond. It'll be great to see that 3 years of effort translating to a production grade infrastructure with real commercial value. Of course, there are other things which has happened in Ubin in terms of building the network, the ecosystem, building and in fact inspiring many other use cases which actually took a production shape last year. In fact, there was bond issued on DLT. One of the company, eBond eValue, started using this technology to fractionalize bond as for retail distribution. Philippines Treasury.
Yes, and I'm one of the customers of Bond eValue.
To me, they were all offshoot of this whole journey Ubin created, that there is a possibility to use DLTs and this technology to change the way you think about this whole financial sector. So it created all this new opportunity, which to me feels truly gratifying, because it changes the way we think how technology should be adopted at a speed we desire to.
So thank you.
Gentlemen, may I interrupt? Mr. Malik, this conversation has been really engaging. If you both don't mind, we can extend it by another 10 minutes, so you can squeeze in the questions you had to leapfrog earlier.
Sure. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. I think we can at least cover more items. So thank you for that. Swapnendu, you covered quite a few points, and also about what has been personally quite gratifying for you in this journey. And would it be fair to say that the real work or the real challenge starts now that, as you said, 3 years have been invested in understanding, learning, deploying a POC, and experimenting by doing rather than through papers and PPTs? Does your real work and challenge start now?
Absolutely. I mean, we indulge in coding, we indulge in technical specs design. Hardly we see central bank doing all this thing, but we got into that space. It was fun. But as you said, the real hard work comes now, because here we are going to challenge status quo processes, cross-border arrangement between two countries. Not easy, even the connecting domestic payment. There are so many embedded legislation way we do things have to be unwinded and built a new way. So these are real hard work, and technology only cannot solve these things. It has to happen through a policy change, process change, central banks agreeing among each other, supervisors agreeing, cross-border data regulation. The whole set kicks in as you get into production.
Thank you. And you've covered some of the 5 Ps that we used to refer to. So process, people, platform, privacy, and policy. So you covered that. Thank you. Swapnendu, right from your very first opening, you spoke quite a bit, and you have alluded quite a bit to cross-border as one of the most logical and rational use cases. So I want to go a little bit over there, and congratulations on your go live that will happen with the Bank of Thailand on the existing cross-border payment rails that you spoke about. We also have seen other announcements maybe in the last 1 year or so, and in fact, even before that, Ubin Jasper was supposed to be one of the very first pilots in this space that I remember researching and studying. Then we had this Intheon and Lion Rock between Bank of Thailand and HKM. And just today we read that the central banks of China and UAE are coming into this CBDC bridge, which has been announced. So since you seem to be, somebody who's a great votary of this being a very valuable and logical use case, perhaps you can shed a little more light to our audience on this particular space. You did allude to these 5P challenges, but if you can tell a little more about how you see this space evolving, how many more regulators do you think will come into the play? What about concerns like national data sovereignty, privacy, etc., and ceding of control? How do you see some of the opportunities and even the challenges in this cross-border space?
Sure. Well, this is a very expanded topic in that sense, because I think we must encourage central banks to do more experiment. In fact, if you look at the scope of the experiment of Jasper Rubin and the one which got announced yesterday, is exactly the same. They're all trying to understand and discover the same piece of virtues of doing this new technology and new CBDC. In fact, there's no difference between all the examples, whether the South African project or the Singapore project or the Canadian project and the new one, MC Bridge. Zero difference, exactly same experiment, exactly same purpose. But what it does, it creating a wider acceptance of a shift, which all are getting mentally prepared to do. So that's the good news of doing most of the experiment, while I think we have come to a stage we can move to production. And I will keep aside the value of wholesale CBDC helping us to get over the three areas of settlement and sanction screening and the reconciliation piece, the FX piece on the whole transaction. Really, the big next step for us, given we've gone through all this experience, is about moving to multilateral structures. And in terms of governance, from a technical perspective, we have tested within this network and proved almost like a viability of a multi-currency settlement platform. And that's what we looked at in the phase 5 of UBIN. And there is this multilateral network, but within the domestic context, which avoids the geopolitical and jurisdictional concerns of why should we allow multilateral network losing your sovereignty rights on these transactions. So the key question now, how to get banks to trust each other in this operation and maintenance of this network. And this is currently in the works. And if you can do this live with commercial bank, the example I took between Temasek, JP Morgan and DBS putting together their brains to build it, then there's a greater hope that we can do so with the central banks. So commercial banks are concerned about commercial interest, and we are working out those concerns. I think we're almost there, Malik, I will say. And once we are through, then comes to between countries. And there are geopolitical concerns, and they're much more difficult to resolve. And how do you develop, I would say, governance mechanism that provides countries certain and trust, some kind of trust on the operations of the network, and how to ensure small countries are not disadvantaged by this by this construct. How to ensure fairness and equity is something from policy standpoint we're also looking at. And these are the questions we are discussing, resolving at an international level. And this is helping us to bring a more transparent, open discussion and collaboration between the central bank community. And hopefully all this experiment will help us to land on policy framework and get this commercial interest, policy interest, geopolitical interest nicely lined up, at least for, I'll say, for certain use cases. May not be for everything. In my hope, my sincere hope, at least use this infrastructure for solving small value transfers for migrant laborers. Use this infrastructure to help them. That can be a great cause and help us to understand the systems better.
I think that's a great point, and that is something which is perhaps as common a problem as can be across many markets, not just in ASEAN, but even South Asia. So I think that's a great use case, and thanks for articulating it and also segregating it between certain use cases that multiple central banks might feel comfortable with in a multilateral setup versus some areas where they might want to retain sovereign control. So thanks for pointing that out. On that segue, I want to press on and ask something which might sound a bit provocative or controversial. So, feel free not to answer it if you're not comfortable, but I feel, it's my obligation to ask this thing. One is you spoke about the trust element between various stakeholders. And, like you, I have been fortunate not only to interact with many regulators on this side when it comes to blockchain, but also speaking at a lot of blockchain conferences where a majority of the speakers are maximalists. And if you go and say this to the maximalists, they'll say, what, this makes no sense, because the whole idea of crypto is to have a trustless network. If your goal is to create trust between stakeholders, then it dilutes the very ethos of Satoshi. And I'm not saying it, I'm just saying there is a counter point of view. That is one. Second is from a multilateral standpoint, how would something like this, kind of either, is it in some ways competing or even potentially cannibalizing the likes of the existing systems which we already have in place, like Swift, and Ripple is already trying to break into it, and now you have central banks trying to get into that space? Is this something which should be left to the domain of the private sector, and something which might impede rather than help?
Well, you went through various emotions in this whole space. And I asked people privately, why you love cryptocurrency? They say it's going to $50,000. It's crossed $50,000. So speculation is a big part of the love for cryptocurrency still. We as a central bank and policymaker, we have an objective-driven focus. We look at problem statement and we look at examine how such technology can solve that problem statement, whether it's inclusion, efficiency, and so forth. So from that perspective, this is not a debate about trust and not trustless. It is a debate about which currency can achieve the objectives in the best possible way. Now, you also about the question of Swift. Swift as a messaging system. Well, Swift can also play a role here because they can be the infrastructure which will talk to different central bank ledgers to do cross-border payment. Why not? So it's nobody's stopping anybody to be part of this journey, and I think that's an open door for all. Again, this is fundamentally questioning. In fact, one elephant in the room is the role of correspondent bank. I think that's the only element in this whole process who get deeply affected in terms of revenue and their own existence. Rest will remain as it is. They'll get better. Trust comes from whether we can always look at future and see things will change. At least for now, the central bank do drive trust, and they will use this trust as a mechanism to drive a leapfrog to new technology. If you try to solve a trust issue, technology issue, use case issue at the same time, you will end up with nothing. So our effort is, Malik, is to get the technology the light of the day by using it in a production grade construct, solving a real problem. To power this, if CBDC be the first use case, a first reason to, if CBDC is the first real value of using this as a mechanism to drive this innovation, let it be. Maybe as a future, other privately issued currency can also play that role, but let it happen. No, there's nothing wrong in that. But don't deny the adoption of the technology if this is the faster way to get there.
Thank you for pointing that out and for articulating about identifying problem statements and solving those, whether it comes from regulators, the private sector, or a consortium. At the end of the day, it is about solving problems and systemic stability and making the lives of consumers better. And I'm quite glad that you actually alluded to those words, because I remember in 2015, perhaps when you had just started your career as a regulator, at one of the conferences, I heard Minister Tharman, when it was those heydays of, or the early days of crypto, even before the heydays, that blockchain is a solution in search of a problem. So we've come a long way from there to now, where you're actually articulating the problem statement first, identifying it, and then looking at what technology stack and solution works best. I am very mindful of time, and I don't want to exceed time because there are going to be speakers after us. But do you think, Swapnendu, perhaps in a couple of minutes, you can give our audience a little bit of an overview about the PBOC China DCEP project? I'm sure many are curious.
Well, that project is primarily designed in understanding and finding, I'll say, a real production grade use case by which we can accept a ERMB in merchant endpoint tourist payments. I think this is just a step forward to find production real value to this technology backed construct. I think many people run speculation behind it that there's something else out there. Let me tell you one more time, there's nothing. It is just one more use case from one more country where they are trying to figure out, will the ERMB be also an alternate way to make the life of whether it's a payment processing or using currencies to do your business and your travel better? Why not? So that's what we're doing here, and we will see some progress this year on this partnership with PBOC. And I will say, my dear friend who runs Mu Changchung, who runs the DCI in PBOC, is a brilliant leader. I think he has same objective: financial inclusion, use case driven, trying to solve a real problem, and I'm sure we'll get there quickly.
Thank you, Swapnendu. I don't think anybody could have summarized this very expansive project in 2 minutes. I could have gone on for 2 hours, so I sincerely appreciate that. We are at the end of time, so let me just do a closing. And this time, I promise everybody it will be a simple yes/no question, so no more than 30 seconds to a minute. So let's say we've spoken a lot about CBDCs. We heard the previous panel look at various dimensions and challenges and opportunities as well. So let's, at the end of the day, as you said, technology stack is fine, but the real work starts now. If we had to say this has to be meaningful and impact the lives of people, drive financial inclusion, etc., 1 billion CBDC users in the world in the next 10 years. I'll give you 4 options. You tell me which of the 4 do you personally think you subscribe to. 1, possible. 2, absolutely will happen. 3, improbable. Or 4, you must be nuts.
I think 1 billion is too small a money. So I'm saying 1 billion CBDC is too. I think that's the too.
No, 1 billion people using CBDC.
Oh, guys, sorry. Okay, 1 billion people.
So out of 7.5, 8 billion, maybe more than 10% of the global population.
Yeah, there's 1 billion people. Well, China itself can get that number, if they want to. I think if China does what they're doing in this whole space, this number is achievable purely by a billion people using CBDC.
So you would say it's probable or absolutely will happen?
It is probable, contingent or dependent on where China goes with this.
Thank you very much. We've just slightly exceeded time, but I truly enjoyed this conversation, and I hope we could have gone on for longer. But let's hand it over to our host, Swapnendu. Thank you for joining us, and over to you, Chiranjeevi.
Thank you so much, Mr. Katodia and Mr. Mohanty. I think my 2 biggest takeaways from that conversation was the fact that a regulator saying that you should allow central bankers to continue to experiment and not restrict them, and secondly, his willingness to allow even private sector to be part of the central bank CBDC journey, which I think is very important for the digital age that we are heading into. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining in and for your thoughts. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Great. So far, we have learned about blockchain, about digital currencies, about central bank currencies, and the scope of law around cryptocurrencies. The obvious question then is, how does a cryptocurrency actually work? We know how rupee works. It is backed by the government, and therefore we trust it as a medium of exchange. But what about crypto? Can it be a medium of exchange like a rupee or dollar? To answer that, we have Mr. Samrat Kishore, a seasoned tech strategy consultant with over 13 years of professional experience working on tech risk, tech strategy, innovation, and M&A programs. He is also a member of NASSCOM's Blockchain SIG and GIFT Blockchain Asia chapter. Thank you, Mr. Kishore, for joining us today. Over to you.
Hey, Chiranjeevi. Hi, is my audio good?
Yes, sir, it's great.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. The conversations so far have been really engaging. Really, what should I say? I was totally hooked. And Swapnindu and Malik, I think great chat and great perspectives brought in. So kudos on that. Thanks a lot, guys, for having me on board and to talk about cryptocurrency. I think it's a very interesting subject, very close to my heart. I've been in the crypto space, so I was doing so a little bit about how I got interested in cryptocurrency, and then I'll get on with the session. So I did a small program. It was a diploma in cyber law way back in about 2013, and then I got interested in the dark web, how Bitcoin was being used for transactions on the dark web, and that got me excited about the currency. I said, okay, fine, there can be something which is not traceable. Although there are negative sides to it, but there was also a positive side to it, that it could travel across borders almost instantly. So yeah, I think I got lucky. I got into the crypto game very early in about 2013 or so. So yeah, hodlers rise and shine. I'm sure there are other hodlers as well on this call. I have a small presentation. Being a consultant, I just cannot do without slides. So I prepared some slides. It is only to give us some talking points about cryptocurrencies, just to keep a direction to the conversation. So do I have? Can I share my screen here?
You should be able to share the screen, sir.
Yeah. Actually, I don't see the option. How come?
It should be at the bottom pane of your screen, I believe.
No, I know that. I was just not getting that file in the things to show.
I believe we are now live. Yeah, we can now see the presentation. Sir, if I may request you to turn
on.
Oh,
you have it. So.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So I'll start with key concepts, and then I'll keep it very short, because I'm assuming that the audience have been through some very mature discussions in this session. So, I will rather allocate more time to answering questions like, what is cryptocurrency not doing, and that sort. So this talk is basically divided into 3 segments. One, I've put in some key core concepts of what comprises of a cryptocurrency. The next section is about some general terms which which are prevalent in the crypto space. And the third one is about evaluating a cryptocurrency. So a lot of cryptocurrencies are out in the market. People hear new names every day. People exchange chats on WhatsApp. But I've just tried to put a framework around evaluating any cryptocurrency, whether it's good or bad, whether you should be supporting it or not. So I think so far we've established the core belief that cryptocurrency is here to stay. Now even corporates have come in, and I think Elon is doing a great job in driving adoption. So now even corporates have come in and they've started taking the currency to the books, which is a great step. We're actually seeing history being created right in front of our eyes. So very interesting times to be in. I'm glad, and I congratulate the people who are on this call, learning about cryptocurrency and forming their opinion about cryptocurrency. I think forming your opinion is extremely important about this key concept. Sure. So I will go on to the first point. What is cryptocurrency? Let's start with the very basic notion of what is a cryptocurrency. It's a digital asset, which is a storage of value. Consider it like a block, like a box, which can be used to store multiple things. Now, those things are all decided by the creator of the cryptocurrency. It's decided at the time when the cryptocurrency is getting created. So it cannot be changed while the cryptocurrency is out there in the market and there are people holding it. If at all any logic needs to be changed in the cryptocurrency, there's a process to be followed. You have to gain majority consensus, and that process is called forking. The first core concept, as you see on the screen, is It does not require a central authority. That's extremely important to understand. There is no central authority to it. I remember having a conversation a few days back with somebody who wanted to own a franchise of a Bitcoin company. It was actually a crypto company which was trying to expand into more geographies. They said, oh, you know what, we need to have an authorization letter from Bitcoin saying that we are authorized to sell Bitcoin. And I said, no, there is no Bitcoin which can give you an authorization letter. And then I spent the next 30 minutes explaining them why there is no central authority giving them that certificate. So there is enough, there is enough material out there in the market to study and understand the currencies. But the key core concept here is that there is no central authority in any of the cryptocurrencies, the way it should be designed. And so its state is maintained through distributed consensus. Now that literally means that people who are owners of the currency, who are on the network, are the real ones maintaining the ledgers. They are the ones maintaining which account has how much cryptocurrency in it. So the accounting mechanism for cryptocurrencies is called blockchain, as you guys have already established. Coming on to the next point, the system keeps an overview of the cryptocurrency units and their ownership. So this is very, very important. Cryptocurrency, just like any other assets or commodities in the real world, are driven by demand and supply. So it's always important to understand what's the supply of cryptocurrency, how many units actually exist, and who owns how many units. So all that accounting, all that ledger has to be maintained within the network. That's extremely, extremely important. These are again concepts of a good cryptocurrency. There are bad cryptos as well. If you go back maybe 2 or 3 years, we will see a lot of examples of bad cryptocurrencies. Third one, predefined rules around creation of new units, transfer, and tracking of ownership. Extremely important. At times it is also termed as tokenomics. It lays down the foundation of foundational rules. It lays down the rules around how are new tokens generated and pumped into the system. So and how is transfer happening? What will be the rules for exchange of hands? And then how will the ownership will be tracked? Whether there'll be miners for every transaction, whether there'll be so consider miners like people who are providing attestation services on every transaction. So while a currency is getting created, you can always define how many people on the network have to really agree to that transaction. Also define designated people who are agreeing to a particular transaction. So all that what should I say, recipe of a cryptocurrency, it's all supposed to be decided right in the beginning. And that's why I said predefined rules around creation and transfer units. Then ownership of cryptocurrency, ideally it should be proved exclusively, which means you do not need people to come and, you do not need a central authority. As I said, there is no central authority in a cryptocurrency. So you do not need a central authority to come and prove that you hold a particular cryptocurrency or what amount of cryptocurrency you hold. You just have to show your wallet. And in the ideal scenario, that wallet is available it's open to the world to go through it and to audit the transactions which have happened in the wallet. So there's a concept called pseudo-anonymity on which the cryptocurrencies, the public cryptocurrencies operate. This pseudo-anonymity basically means that you do not, while we are not establishing identity, we are still tracking wallet ownerships. So these wallets are nothing but a store of your crypto tokens, and they have a unique address. That unique address can only be one in the whole world. So you have your wallet, which is very unique, and that is storing all the currencies. So the ownership, which is actually your wallet, is, it can prove your holdings, but it can never be tied back to your name unless you want it to be. So that's the concept of pseudo-anonymity, that while everything is out in the open, everybody can audit wallets. Everybody knows, here is a ledger of all wallets. These are the holdings inside every wallet, but nobody will be able to establish that, yes, this is Samrat's wallet and he's holding this much cryptocurrency, unless you go out in the world and you publish it. Next concept, transactions are allowed on the network which facilitate transfer of ownership. I think this is extremely important for anything which is supposed to be called as a currency. The facilitation of transaction has to happen. Next one, extremely important. That's why I kept it in the end. That's probably why, then, that's what gave birth to Bitcoin, when Satoshi was actually able to solve this problem of double spending. So any digital currency, the biggest problem is that you can spend the same money twice. And Satoshi solved that problem by use of blockchain or the consensus mechanism. And that is why any good cryptocurrency, the way it is designed, it should stop people from double spending tokens. So that means if you have, let's say, 10 tokens in your wallet, you should not be able to spend the same 10 tokens. You should not be able to transfer the same 10 tokens to two people. So that's an extremely important concept, double spending, and every cryptocurrency should block it. Okay, how are we going to do this? Are we going to have questions right away, Chiranjeevi, or should I just proceed?
Thank you, Mr. Kishore, for that presentation. Now, Bijoy Sankar Saikia, editor at ETMarkets.com, will be joining the conversation for a quick, Q&A session with Mr. Kishore. So, over to you, Bijoy, sir. Bijoy, sir, can you hear us?
Am I audible?
Yes, you are. Yes, you are. Thank you.
Hi, Samrat. Great presentation. Actually, you have decoded the entire thing very nicely. Thank you so much.
Hi, Bijoy. Yeah, I would go through the key terms as well. But yeah, your questions are.
We can have another 5-10 minutes. Actually, a lot of audience would be very new to these concepts, and I think that will be wonderful and a great value addition if you can do that.
Sure. Awesome. So I will start with tokens and altcoins. So these are any these digital assets that we are talking about, they're termed as tokens. So you will read a lot of articles where you'll see cryptocurrency as one word, crypto space currency, or just tokens. All of them are practically the same. And altcoins. So this is very important. Bitcoin was the first cryptocurrency, and the believers of Bitcoin, the way they see the world, they say, you know what, this is Bitcoin, and then the rest of the world. So that's why everything else is it came to be known as altcoins, alternate currency. Anonymity I've already spoken about, so I would not go there again in the interest of time. Mining I've already spoken about. That's the consensus mechanism, how you arrive at the legitimacy of a transaction on the network. Fungibility, very important concept. Fungibility means that whether the tokens can be stacked or not. So imagine it like Indian rupees, for example. You can put two 100 rupee notes and make it 200 rupees, right? And then you can also break them down into further smaller denominations, but the summation will still be 200 rupees. Same applies to tokens as well. So these tokens can all be clubbed and then be created into larger blocks and smaller denominations, etc. But then there are non-fungible tokens as well, NFTs, and a lot of gaming applications, a lot of entertainment applications. The biggest application that I know about is called CryptoKitties. So they give very unique kitties to every owner. So you can actually buy a non-fungible token. It's a very unique token which is just created for purpose, and you can actually store it. Just like an asset, but it is unique in the world. There's never a second asset to what you have. So that's the fundamental difference between fungibility and non-fungibility. Extremely important for you to evaluate any cryptocurrency, whether the tokens are fungible or not. Wallet, again, I've spoken about wallets. There can be hardware wallets as well, by the way. So extremely important to understand, again, from a security perspective, that I have seen people losing out on their cryptocurrency. They store their wallets on their laptops, and then the laptops crash, and their money is gone. or their laptop is stolen or something and their money's gone. So a lot of times this also happens. I myself have lost a lot of cryptocurrency to one hard disk crash long time back. It brings back a lot of bad memories, but yeah, it's an experience which I can share here. So be sure that you diversify. Be sure that you maintain your wallets either on the cloud or Then I also moved on to a hardware wallet. So you can also have a hardware wallet. It practically looks like a pen drive. You can store your cryptos and be done with it. So you'll not rely on one piece of hardware. Then exchanges, again, an important concept to understand in terms of cryptocurrency. So while we've spoken about cryptocurrencies networks, what is your gateway to access those networks? Either you become a participant and you start downloading the whole blockchain and put in all your computing resources into just maintaining the ledger, which may be for nothing because you are a very small participant in the whole network. The second way is going via an exchange. An exchange gives you access to participate in the crypto world by going and buying cryptocurrency. They're giving you a gateway. So what they'll do is they'll take your fiat currency, which is regular currency, your Indian rupees or US dollars, and in return to that, they will give you the currency of the cryptocurrency of your choice. So it may be Bitcoin, it may be Ether, can be actually anything. Then that currency you can store in your wallets. It necessarily does not require you to store the currency in their wallets, while the exchanges also offer the wallets. You can have your wallets wherever you want. So a lot of flexibility is there. At this stage, I'd also like to talk about hacks. So a lot of times it's in the news that particular currency got hacked. It's not actually currencies getting hacked. It's the exchanges getting hacked, and there have been some pretty nasty hacks in the past for these exchanges. So those are some fundamental things about cryptocurrencies, and yeah, some the model that I spoke about for evaluating a cryptocurrency, a good cryptocurrency. There's no formula for it, but I think all of us should have a value system. How do we approach a cryptocurrency from the perspective of, let's say, investing or believing in it or something like that? We can start from the left hand side, which is trading volume, whether there is liquidity in the system or not. So trading volume, typically you can go to exchanges, you can go to a website called CoinMarketCap, etc., and you can see whether the currency is moving or not. Moving in the sense, are people buying and selling the currency or not, or is it just sitting idle? Whoever has it is just holding it, or people have just given up on it and they've just left the system. So that's why understanding the trading volume is very, very important. And the same also goes with market cap. So you should also always look at what's the market cap of a currency, which means that if I were to liquidate all of it, what is the value will I get in terms of US dollars? So whether that US dollars value is increasing or decreasing. So you would have heard very recently Bitcoin hit a market cap of $1 trillion. How does that happen? Because the dollar value per Bitcoin was increasing. So you multiply that with the total number of Bitcoins in the world, and then you get that market cap. So it's always good to evaluate a currency by looking at what's the market cap, whether the currency is really appreciating in value or not. Then there is token economics. Again, as I said, rules around how the tokens are created, burned, transferred, etc. What's the science behind or the economics behind the tokens we're talking about? Then novelty of the idea. A lot of times these crypto tokens are backed by ideas. So people would say, you know what, you buy these tokens from me, and then in future we're going to launch a bank, and you're going to get part ownership in the bank and stuff like that. So you always have to evaluate what's the idea, and the next point, what's the team behind building that particular cryptocurrency. Then circulating supply. So whenever cryptocurrencies are launched, they're always the team actually.
Mr. Kishore, may I interrupt? I think your presentation is no longer visible. So if you could share your screen again.
Oh, it's not visible?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, are we up?
Great. Thank you.
Okay, cool. So circulating supply. I was talking about what portion is open to the market. So when the team comes up with an idea and with token economics, they also explain what part of the tokens, the whole the 100% tokens getting generated, how much are we retaining for ourselves versus how much are we actually letting out in the market for people to buy and to trade. So we should always keep a check on that. There are some thresholds, some good practices of the crypto world to watch out when you're evaluating a cryptocurrency. So that brings me to the end of my talk. Bijoy, any questions you've received from the audience? Would you like to ask any questions?
Yes, there are actually plenty of questions from audience, of course. In fact, you'll be amazed. We have questions from very senior management of companies and technologies, techies, in fact.
Mm-hmm.
But I myself have a lot of questions, in fact, going through your entire discussion. They are related to mostly use cases. You said you yourself are an crypto investor, right? You said you have some cryptocurrency as well. Now, when you invest in a cryptocurrency, this is not yet for used for transaction, etc. Right?
Mm-hmm.
What is the motive with which you are going out and putting your money there?
So I would say the investors, anybody who's terming themselves as crypto investors, should just consider it as one of the asset classes. So I'm not saying put all your money in or put your lunch money into cryptocurrency. It's just an asset class, the way I see it. Plus, at times I have found value in making payments overseas, etc., or exchanging one currency for the other one. So that's the reason I keep holding a lot of cryptocurrency, and that's the sole reason other people should also invest. Eventually, see, it's like an asset, and if you are able to make returns out of it, and you're able to pay taxes and justify your income out of it, I think nothing like it. It's beautiful.
When you call it an asset or maybe an investable asset, the problem with this, in fact, we keep referring to it as digital gold and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But the problem is that it is not an asset-backed, typical asset-backed kind of an asset, right? The problem there is that it's driven by speculation and demand and supply and things like that. It's the rarity of the asset that is what is probably driving its demand, right? We keep talking about how Bitcoin is just it, we will shortly reach its peak point or something like that in terms of supply. Now, when an asset is not backed by asset, when a financial instrument is not backed by asset, the risk is that it depends on perception. Like more than gold, because gold has some use cases. If I compare it with, say, an painting, right? It has its demand for the person who appreciates it. Otherwise, tomorrow, if somebody who doesn't appreciate it, even Leonardo da Vinci probably could be lying in some storehouse. We have those instances like that. Now, what happens? It becomes a very kind of an alternate asset class, very high and kind of a very risky asset class.
Yeah, you're right. So, Bijoy, great point you brought up, which was around being backed by an asset. So, a lot of cryptocurrencies, it's like types. As I said, you have to evaluate cryptocurrencies before you put in any money. It's a big disclaimer. Please don't go on what I say, but do your own due diligence. Anybody who's watching this. So, Bijoy, as you pointed out, it's not backed by assets. So, there are currencies which are backed by assets. I have personally worked on 2 projects where currencies were backed by gold, physical gold being kept in vaults and being tokenized and then part ownership given to people. So yes, I do agree. And as I said, there are other asset classes as well. If you go to stock markets, they have circuit breakers, and you can still protect your money. But once cryptocurrency starts falling in value, there's just no way to stop it. So it can actually, it's totally market driven, and that's why I also brought in one more point around liquidity. Whether will you be able to sell it or not? Because I have seen there are times when people are locked up with their cryptocurrency. So it's a very risky asset. Yes, extremely risky asset. People should only put in money if they're happy to lose it.
Wonderful. That's I think
that's something which I tell a lot of my cousins, a lot of my colleagues, co-workers, friends ask me about things, and I keep telling them that put in money only if you are okay to lose that amount of money and does not make a big difference to your entire portfolio. But look at the upside. What if you end up making money? That is exactly what happened with a lot of people when Bitcoin started soaring in the past 2 months. As you would have seen. So yeah, it's a risky game.
Great. You brought out the issue of liquidity. The thing is that again, you said that you might lose the entire money. The concern that a lot of people would have is that when I hold a rupee note or maybe a dollar note, right? It is being signed by the central banker saying that, okay, I owe you this much of money. Whereas in case of a cryptocurrency or Bitcoin, nobody is giving you that guarantee, right? So there is a risk that if tomorrow that trend actually collapses, that something, a lot of regulation comes in and the sentiment goes negative, asset class might just fall flat.
Absolutely. In fact, the only the degree of confidence. I mean, when I started investing in Bitcoin, there was absolutely no way we could get any assurance. But now, at least you have market assurance saying, there are the biggest of the banks, biggest of the corporations supporting this currency. So at least you're part of a clan which has sizable amounts invested in this currency. So if something happens, it will happen for the entire group. So you will still be there. A lot of media, as you can see, this is ET Conclave, right? So a lot of media attention has also come to the cryptocurrency. But yes, there is no way to even say who's Satoshi, right? So Satoshi may be anywhere, sitting, smiling, sipping a cup of tea, and he may decide that it's time to move on to something else.
Right. Also, we keep hearing that there are about 7 to 8 millions of Indians who are investing in cryptocurrency. You being in the system, how do you describe of course, it's non-identifiable, as you said, you don't know who he is.
Yeah.
How do you describe the average Indian Bitcoin investor? Yesterday, I was talking to somebody from WazirX, and he was telling me, these are like 28 to 30 kind of people.
Yeah.
In fact, in this conference itself, the people who are registering, I have, some of the senior executives who are asking very basic questions about cryptocurrency and Bitcoins. Obviously, there is a lot of gaps in terms of awareness. So who is the average Indian Bitcoin investor? How do you define him?
Well, I think they're largely people who understand tech. First of all, the personas. If I were to make a persona for a crypto investor in India, they understand tech. They are it's the same age group as you said. They have some disposable income. I would not say a large amount of people who do not have disposable incomes would be putting in money here. So they have disposable incomes. They have fair understanding of tech, etc., and they have a big feeling of FOMO. It's largely driven by the feeling of missing out. It's like I'm sure somebody somewhere has come up with a word for Bitcoin FOMO, but yeah, it's largely driven by that. So I've known people, just for the sake of posting on Facebook that I'm an investor in Bitcoin. They've bought Bitcoin and they've started posting it. But yeah, it's one thing which I do believe, it's a fact, and I'm thankful to ET for organizing sessions like these, that a major chunk of the investors in cryptocurrency do not really understand the science behind it. So that's why I came up with these 2 or 3 concepts for evaluating currencies before you put in any money. It's important.
Right, but it may generalizing maybe a little bit risky, because one speaker, in fact, in one of those panels mentioned that some of the even corporates are looking at putting their treasuries in crypto. In fact, Tesla is already doing it in some cases. And in fact, it has got a lot of endorsement on Wall Street.
Yeah.
I saw some tweets last week on the Wall Street itself. Some people are saying that the time has come, but someone like Rakesh Jundunwala saying no, currency is in the domain of only the sovereign. So It should not exist at all. Anyway, my last point, because one another speaker is waiting, your next speaker. Who regulates there has to be some kind of regulation, some answerability somewhere, right? Right now, we don't have any defined regulation right here. So under whose domain is it coming right now?
Sure. So I can, with my limited knowledge, I can just take a guess. The only reason why some governments have not accepted and some governments have accepted it is because cryptocurrency cannot be tied to a geography. So you never know. I may buy a Bitcoin in Australia, and I may, in the next minute, I may just sell it in Dubai, and I may make a killing out of it, just by because it's all an exchange. It's all exchange. It's all spot prices. There are tons of companies I know about who are working just on arbitrage. They just buy Bitcoin from somewhere else and sell it somewhere else. So currently there is no one authority, as you rightly pointed out. The governments are wary of this because since it is not tied to a geography, it cannot be taxed. So they only go after the income which is being made out of cryptocurrency, and then they can tax the individual. So I may be sitting in India trading in 2 or 3 countries. So the Indian government will then know that yes, I've made some money out of selling it, but then they don't know which kind of tax is applicable to me. So generally people end up paying the highest slab of the tax, whichever is possible, because they've made a lot of money and they feel that it is fine if the government wants a piece of it. So I don't want to go against anybody, but I think it's a big claim for me to say this, but I would say it's become so huge, or it is poised to become so huge, that there has to be a global arrangement, a global agreement around it, something like on the lines of Paris Climate Agreement. The governments have to come together and talk about it.
Yes. Fingers crossed, Kishore. We hear, in fact, today, RBI governor said something.
And in general, I feel from the perspective of future of cryptocurrencies, I feel there are 2 or 3 points which I'll just close my talk with. One is moving towards efficiency. So as you would have read in the news sometimes, that the Bitcoin is only the Bitcoin network, and there are other currencies as well. Only the Bitcoin network is consuming more electricity than a small country, right? So we have to move towards. We have to also care about the planet and not just our pocket. So at times we have to move towards greener currencies. Second is atomic swaps. I think that's one upcoming field. Atomic swaps is nothing but swapping one currency to the other without the need for intermediaries. So currently it's happening via exchanges. There are companies and there are technologies being developed towards atomic swaps. And I think once that comes into play, you'll also see one more boom.
Right.
These are not just one cryptocurrency, but multiple cryptocurrencies.
That helps that liquidity issue as well.
Yeah. And the third thing is, higher acceptance by the banks for on-ramp and off-ramp. So on-ramp and off-ramp is when you convert your fiat currency to cryptocurrency is on-ramp, and off-ramp is when you convert your cryptocurrency to fiat currency. So higher acceptance for these transactions. So it should ideally be just sold like any other commodity,
Right.
So yeah, these are 3 things which I see as the future towards driving higher adoption. Thanks, Vijay, and efforts like these.
I must say it was almost like a mini masterclass. Yeah, you were so thorough and through all this and very articulate and simplified every terminology and concepts. I really got a lot more enlightened after this session. Thank you so much for joining us, Kishore. Hope to talk to you again on another platform on this topic. I think sure. This is something that is probably going to stay and will keep us on our toes, trying to understand and decode things for our readers. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thanks, Vijay. Thanks, Chiranjeevi.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for joining the platform.
Cheers.
Cheers. Great. Moving on. We have, earlier today, the RBI Governor Shaktikanta Das voiced grave concerns about cryptocurrencies. And just yesterday, veteran investor Rakesh Jhunjhunwala said that he wants regulators to ban it and swears by never buying Bitcoin. If the government indeed does ban cryptocurrencies going forward, can India really live without it? And that is what Nishal Shetty, founder and CEO of WazirX, India's prime cryptocurrency exchange, and a platform for millions of users to trade and hold cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Ripple and whatnot. So I will hand it over to Mr. Shetty, who has joined us today to share his view on whether India can live without cryptocurrencies. Over to you, Mr. Shetty.
Hey, Chiranjeevi. Thanks for inviting me. And I think one of the, before I just came on this, and Mr. Bijay, we were talking about this, right? I just tweeted about this whole can India, really live without crypto? And I got like a bunch of, a lot of tweets in support of that. And I thought I should probably just read out a couple of them.
Wonderful.
Just because this puts out the, it's not, it just puts out the people's view. Yeah. So like, and there are so many of them. I would love to read everything, but I think, here's someone who's saying that most of the crimes are done by the internet. Should we ban the internet too? And, I think that's a really thought-provoking tweet out there. Then here's someone who's saying that India cannot live without crypto because we'll lose employment opportunities and government will lose taxes. We'll also lose investment opportunities as investors. And crypto is not a harm or a threat to the nation. And these are voices from the common people of India. And I think if we look at where the ban word or the thought of a ban is coming, it's coming from more from not the people who are involved on the ground, but from people who probably just read about cryptocurrencies, but haven't really gotten their hands into it. And to get the right regulation in India, I believe we should hear both regulators and authorities, and also the common man or the common people of this country. And I think the voice that is drowned out right now is the voice of the nation. What are the common people in India doing with crypto? And I would love to discuss more. Happy to answer any questions you might have around this.
Welcome, Nishal. Actually, you have hit the ground running. Wonderful, and it's a great start. I am sorry to keep you waiting because the conversation with Samrat was going really.
No, I saw that. It was very interesting.
The basics. We are getting our basics right before you go into the remaining discussion. Somebody said, so cryptocurrency itself is a misnomer actually. In today's panel also someone said the cryptocurrency itself is a misnomer. It's actually crypto asset. And also somebody said that a lot of people who are probably investing in it don't probably even understand it, right? So how much about all this talk that going around about banning it, or maybe the demand? We heard some Dalal State guy yesterday, Rakesh Jhunjhunwala, saying that it should be banned because currency is the domain of the sovereign and things like that. Today, RBI governor is quoted saying that. Now, how much of this has to do with the understanding of the concept itself, maybe the technology itself? Is there a gap in that?
Absolutely. In fact, when I hear statements like saying that ban Bitcoin because only India can issue a currency, that itself shows that there's a miscommunication or a misunderstanding of what Bitcoin is versus what the INR is. Let's take the very basic difference. INR is an inflationary system of monetary system, and Bitcoin is a deflationary asset class. So how do you even compare a deflationary asset class with an inflationary currency out there? Because by the nature of Bitcoin, the whole fact that it is limited in number, it can never compete with a currency. So then we realize that the misnomer of calling things as cryptocurrency is what probably leading to this. And then there are suggestions like let's call them as a crypto asset, or so that there's less confusion in the people's mind. I understand that, but I think the first thing to do is let's spread the information about what this really is, what Bitcoin is, what Ethereum is, and what INR is. For a long time, people thought that INR was a currency backed by gold. And even now people don't realize, it's a fiat currency, and you cannot have Bitcoin fighting or competing with a fiat currency. Now, the other important thing that I think, I've heard this in the previous talks also, where they say that people don't know what cryptocurrencies are, so they should not be involved in that. Tell me how many people really understand how the internet works. When we type www.websitename.com, do we really know what happens inside to get us that web page? We don't, but we still work on the internet. We are every day is on the internet. So deep understanding of technology versus how to use a technology are two different things. And I believe the people of India today, they know how to use cryptocurrencies. You go to a 22 or a 25-year-old who's into crypto, he or she will tell you everything about how to use cryptocurrencies. They may not be technically really a technology expert, but they're really experts at using cryptocurrencies in the right way. And I think now I cannot say this of people in regulatory bodies who are sitting there, who may not have really tried their hand on cryptocurrencies. And my request is that let's try this out. Try this technology, try how to send Bitcoins, how to buy the Bitcoins, see what it is. And I think then you will realize that the first thing about comparing with INR is a wrong comparison, because it does not fit. You cannot use Bitcoin in everyday transaction simply because a Bitcoin transaction fee is 300 to 500 rupees. Now, how does one use Bitcoin for purchasing everyday goods? I am not going to pay 100 rupees to someone and pay 500 as a transaction fee. We have INR where the transaction fee is 0. So the first, the definition, the whole comparison itself, tells you that there's not been done any research on this sector at all. And then the claims are really not correct. And I think things like this, the platforms like these are going to probably help us put that misinformation away and put the right things in front of people.
Right, but I beg to differ with you in the sense that when it comes to a financial instrument or an investment product, a better understanding is always encouraged. We should not encourage anybody to invest in any asset without understanding it, without having a good awareness about it. And anything in the domain of investment, nobody should do anything blindly. So that's not something that we'd love to encourage. But then earlier we had Swapnendu from Singapore Monetary Authority, and he actually said a lot of use cases. He advocated why we should have a central bank digital currency. And he in fact went on to say that probably in 3 years or 5 years, we will have 1 billion users all over the world, right, of digital currency. Now, he talked of the use cases where, you probably can remit money with just 3-4 clicks, or maybe, in terms of foreign exchange that you require to travel to another country, how convenient it can be and how cheaper it can be. So probably more than talking about those small transactions, or maybe how 20-year-old or 22-year-old buying it, or maybe the speculative force driving up the value of these cryptocurrencies, we probably should look at more on the use cases, right? And how do you look at that aspect? What are the things that, as someone from the industry, where can we go if we actually embrace it?
Sure. I think one thing I would like to point out that I'm a strong believer of CBDCs, central bank digital currencies, coming into effect, simply because the replacement of traditional INR is actually a digital INR. And I believe that when you get in digital INR, that's when everyone will use the digital INR for transactions in India in the regular aspect. What I'm against is saying that because there is Bitcoin or some other crypto, we cannot bring in digital INR, or digital INR will have a competition, because there is no competition to digital INR. That will have a different purpose. Now coming to use cases and talking about, so let's look at this. I heard somewhere in the talk that this is seen as digital gold, Bitcoin, and but then the question is, what's the use case? Now look at this. The reason why Bitcoin was made is because still Bitcoin was not existent. There was no way for someone to send value over the internet. So the only way I could send value over the internet before the Bitcoin was created was if I have my bank in between, which meant we always wanted a third party in between for a transaction. Now Bitcoin's innovation is the fact that they removed this third party, built a decentralized public blockchain, no owners, and you can send value between each other. The last time an innovation like this happened was the internet, where the internet said you don't need a third party to send information between each other. And where are we today? The world has progressed, India has progressed. In fact, a large part of India's progress is the internet. The internet era has given Indians the opportunity to excel. Now, this second revolution, which is similar to the internet, is value transfer. Now, a lot of people ask me, what are the use cases? If you ask me the use case of the internet in 1995 or 1998, that I would not have been able to tell you beyond maybe email or chat. And I used to do this. And back then people used to say, how much will you chat and what will you do? So similarly, today when I tell that the best use case of Bitcoin is, I can send Bitcoin to anyone, anywhere in the world. And one of the use case of that is remittances, where people can directly send money from their Bitcoin wallet to their family back in India in 15 minutes and save all that about 7 to 10% fees that is spent in the transfer of traditional remittance. They can save that 7 to 10%. And India does $150 to $200 billion in remittance a year, I think. So that's a saving of $15 to $20 billion to the common people of India. It's in the pockets of the people who are then doing it, not in the pockets of the middlemen that are involved in between. This is just one use case. Now there will be a lot of use cases because now you have the power of programmable money. Programmable internet money was never possible before Bitcoin. What are the use cases? I think once we let this ecosystem grow and we let people create companies around this, only then will we know. But if we were to ban this, even before companies can establish themselves and prove there are use cases, it's like we're saying, let's ban cryptocurrency. And at the same time, we're asking what are the use cases of cryptocurrency? If we do not allow this ecosystem to grow, how will we even know what are the use cases? So there definitely is a lot of potential here. But the problem is today we have uncertainty in the country. And a lot of entrepreneurs here are afraid to build on this. We need to first promote them to come and create startups, build for this, and then we'll see a lot more use cases emerge in India.
Right. So Nishal, when you say this entire uncertainty that has been persisting ever since first the ban came in by RBI about transaction with banks, then Supreme Court went ahead and lifted that ban, and then again about this new bill that is probably coming in. Number one, have you, as a stakeholder, have you interacted with maybe the regulator or the government in these discussions, in these forums? If not, if yes, what have you said? What is the case you are putting out? And if not, what is the case that you want to put out?
Yeah, so we haven't really, as an industry, the entire industry hasn't really had an opportunity to have a formal discussion on this with the regulators or anyone. But what we've done is, at least as far as our leaders in the parliament, a lot of MPs we've been able to meet over the years. And we've been able to also have discussions, like these forums like these. We've had discussions like Mr. Subhash Chandra Garg has been, who was part of the 2019 crypto ban bill. In fact, he's been one of an active participant these days and even last year. So we've had those interactions, but not really a formal interaction where we've had the opportunity to present our case. Now, the second part is if we do have an interaction, and I believe we will over time, now that the bill is there, I believe the government will also involve the industry eventually. The first and foremost, I think the thing is, if you look at it, the regulators, I think their issue is with the currency aspect of crypto, which is, don't use it as a replacement to INR or as a competition to INR. The MPs that we've spoken to, I realize they want to foster innovation in India and they want to have a digital India. Our Prime Minister also wants to do that. Our Prime Minister also wants Atmanirbhar Bharat to grow in the country, bring in more startups. Now we have an alignment here saying, and we have some countries that have done this, is first, you don't want to use, let's say, cryptocurrencies as a currency in the country. Definitely do not promote that use case. So what we can do is we can say that cryptocurrency should not be used as a currency or as a payment instrument in India. The second aspect is how do you foster innovation is by allowing them to be used as an asset class or as a utility or as a commodity. Now, Indonesia, for example, has done this. They've said, do not use it as a payment instrument, but you can trade in it. You can involve yourself. You can start up on it. You can build what you want. Now that's a beautiful way for you to foster innovation and also make sure that the negative use cases that you're afraid of do not emerge in the country. So this is our going to be our recommendation to the government as well to start with. This is how you can start rather than saying do not do anything, because that will destroy an entire ecosystem that exists in India, which has been built in the last 5 to 8 years. And over 10 million people, over 1 crore people, and 340 plus startups. So I think the objective is to say that there is a middle path where you don't have to worry. It's not like you either have to say only bad will happen or only good will happen. There will always be both aspects. You can regulate them. You can prevent the bad and promote the good that exists in this ecosystem.
And there are these concerns about money laundering and stuff like that, and the security aspect, of course, that comes in. How is there anything built into the system that you can go out and convince the regulators and the government saying that no, we are foolproof over there?
Absolutely. In fact, this is a very important question. Now, let's take, for example, if you were to buy your first ever cryptocurrency, the way for you to do that is to go on an exchange, let's say like WazirX, and transfer your INR and buy your first crypto. When you do that, you also we ensure that you do your KYC as well, so that there is no anonymity aspect of buying and selling of cryptocurrency. This keeps our ecosystem safe, our users safe. If you were to purchase your cryptocurrency and do some bad illegal activities, the nature of blockchain is that it's public. So the government, you, me, anyone, we can all trace where these cryptocurrencies are traveling. So if you were to use that for any illegal purposes, the government will get to know that. Now, the other objective is, let's say you ban it. Then what happens is you will try to buy your first cryptocurrency through a cash system or an underground system. So no one will know that you bought cryptocurrencies. And then if you do something bad, the government will also not be able to trace back it to an illegal activity or a person who's bought it. Government will never know. So it is in the best interest of regulators and the government to regulate an industry like this, which is why we are seeing that in the US, UK, EU region, Singapore, everywhere, the governments are telling let's regulate so that if there are any bad activities, we can identify, and the good actors can continue to do their innovative approach. Whatever you want to do as a startup, as an individual investor, you can continue to do that without any fear.
Right. In fact, we also find that the sense that one gets is that it's not that government doesn't appreciate the technology. In fact, the regulators at RBI's level also there. In fact, the governor himself mentioned that RBI is working on its own cryptocurrency. Right. That means they actually appreciate the technology and the immense possibilities that it offers. Now the question is, should it be in the private domain? Because of course, currency is something that no central bank wants to let go of the control of the currency part of the economy, right? So how do you handle that question? What happens if the private players are banned and the government brings in its own cryptocurrency? Where is what is the negative side of it, or what the positive side of it?
See, I think this again is, I think I'm with everyone, with you, the regulators, that private companies should not be allowed to create a currency of their own. I completely accept that. But private players should be able to create their own utility tokens. So here's the thing, let's break this down. A crypto or a cryptocurrency is divided into 4 broad categories. It can either be a currency, or it can be a commodity, or it can be a utility, or it can be a security. So the first use case is currency, which is buying and selling. And I believe this should be probably in the government domain.
Right.
So let's keep it there. My question comes: what happens to cryptocurrencies that are commodities,
right,
or that are utilities, or securities? For securities, we know we have SEBI, so we could move these security tokens under SEBI's regulatory oversight. What happens to commodities? Maybe we have commodities regulators who could regulate this.
Maybe.
And what happens to utilities? Now, utilities are tokens that are used within an ecosystem, within a website. Like you have, shopping points on shopper stops. The loyalty points.
We already use things like Sodexo.
Yes, Sodexo. So that's a great example of a utility token. So now the thing is, why do we put a blanket approach to this when we know this is how they are classified? In fact, in the UK, this is exactly what is being done. So if something is a currency, that gets regulated under the central bank of in the UK. If it's a security, it gets into the securities regulator. Commodities into the commodities regulator, and utility, because there is no law today legally. So utilities are okay. That's how UK is proposing. In the US also, what the SEC in the US is saying is that if it's a security, we are going to come after you. So you better follow all the rules of the securities in the US. So this is being done. So then the question is, why are we only catching hold of the currency aspect and applying it to the other categories? We should not do that. I think I definitely stick to the fact that the currency is in the domain of the central bank and it should remain there. But the other utilities and the security and the commodities aspect, the public participation should be allowed. So that's all this is all about. There's no fight about, no, we should all be creating our own currencies. I think that'll be madness. I don't know what will happen. But the other aspects, I think we should all be allowed to participate. And in fact, everyone around the world is doing that right now.
Right. The other question that, in fact, your colleague was there in the panel from your organization. So he mentioned, in fact, like Elon Musk has done, some of Indian corporates are also looking at using their treasuries to put some of part of it maybe in Bitcoin. How real is it? Is it really happening in India?
So I've seen early feelers of that. See, the thing is, if you look at Indian companies today, we are not just bound to India. A lot of companies are also building for the global world. And right. I think we should promote more of that. Now, what happens when you look at your global competitors getting into a new asset class? You have one of the two choices. Either ignore it or make sure you're also hedging yourself.
Right.
So that if that is a reality, a new reality, or is where every company holds Bitcoin, you want to be the early movers. So this thought is pushing a lot of these companies in India into this direction. Still early days. I think maybe some family offices where they have more control over going fast on this are probably at the later stages. But a lot of other companies are just understanding right now. They want to understand, because Tesla has done it, Square has done it, PayPal has done it. MicroStrategy, a large fund in the US, is doing it. There is something to it. And in the US, it's estimated at least 500 to 1,000 corporates are already in it, because not everyone is announcing this. Not everyone is telling everyone that, we've invested in Bitcoin. A lot of them are keeping it private. Only public companies are what we are hearing about. So India, definitely, I think we should not be behind this, because 1-2 years delay will cause us a lot of, I would say, loss in terms of innovation and catching up with the world. Then we'll be spending another 2 years catching up with the rest of the company. So I think that's probably the reason. Competition is the biggest reason why Indian companies are also looking into it right now.
Okay, tell me, sir, about the use cases at the exchange level itself. What are the kind of fee and etc. that one has to pay if someone goes to the exchange? Because I'm sure there are a lot of aspiring investors among the audience who would like to understand how the entire transaction system works.
Sure. So I think when you want to buy your first cryptocurrency, what you do is you transfer INR to an exchange like WazirX, and you put your first buy order. The fee is 0.1 to 0.2%, depending on the volumes you trade and everything. And based on the price that is there in the market, we are an open order book exchange, which means we don't buy or sell cryptocurrency. We just help people do it. So depending on the price in the market, you can buy. I think one of the misconceptions that people usually have is that, do I have to buy the entire Bitcoin? Which you don't. You can buy Bitcoin for as low as, let's say, 500 rupees. Because just like you don't have to buy 1 kilo of gold, you can buy an ounce or a gram. You can do the same in Bitcoin as well. You can buy a small part of it. So ideally, people start with 500 rupees or 1,000 rupees. They understand the cycle, all the fees involved, and then they go to buy more.
The other aspect, as you said, that you might be owning it in India and then you go to Dubai and probably cash it or something like that, right? So how does the cross-currency math work there? Because a lot of Indians today travel overseas and Forex is one aspect, they are often worried about because, there are a lot of fluctuation. So how does that work? Do I have an edge over there?
See, there's no defined law around this right now, but I think no one can stop you from, let's say, using your cryptocurrency anywhere in the world. And this is where regulations are going to be really, really helpful, because people today do not know whether this is okay to do or not. But if you have regulation where you define what is allowed and what is not, then people will know how to use them. For example, if you do not want people to, let's say, use this Bitcoin in some other country, then you can lay regulations around it, saying that use it within the country or hold it and you can sell it. For example, when you buy or sell cryptocurrencies on an exchange like WazirX, you are only trading with Indians. So we make sure that you're doing it only in India. Now, whether you can take it outside the country or not, I think this is where regulations will help a lot. There's still uncertainty, but given the technology, you can definitely do it. There's nothing stopping you.
I'm running out of time over here, but I'd ask two quick questions over there. How liquid is this asset? Because tomorrow, suppose something adverse comes in and I'm an investor today, if I'm holding it today, how fast can I liquidate or maybe convert it into something kind of a fiat currency or a dominant currency?
Look, I think in terms of liquidity, if you compare it to the liquidity of gold globally or the equities markets that we see, it's comparatively lower. It's not a highly liquid market compared to other traditional markets because it's a new one. Which is why when you hear a story, a news of a Tesla buying worth $1 billion, $1.5 billion, you see the price appreciate by 10-20%. So that's something that we all have to be aware about. But what we've seen is that the liquidity today in India is good enough to handle about $100-200 million or even more. I think $300-400 million worth of trades a day. So that's the kind of liquidity that you can expect in the Indian markets. And globally, I think it's in a few $1 billion.
Right. So we started with whether India can live without cryptocurrency. So we have to end with that question itself. So you have, of course, presented the dream scenario that probably you are thinking of, and probably you are going to make your case at some point, wherever you get your chance. But what is it that you are visualizing? How are we going? Where are we headed?
So I think, yeah, see, the thing is, the fact that we are even discussing all this and there's a bill around crypto in India, I think I see that as a very positive direction, because before this, we had no understanding or knowledge of what the government is thinking, or is the government even looking into the sector. I'm really excited about the fact at least the government is talking about it. Now the question is what direction to take it. I think with industry participation, and see, our government is there to help grow this country in the right direction. So I believe that when they start interactions with us, we'll present our case. And I'm really confident that our leaders in parliament are going to question about, what are the positives and what are the negatives, both. They're not just going to think about only the negative use cases. They're going to look at the innovative positive use cases. And I believe that there's enough positive use cases of cryptocurrencies for India to adopt it and regulate it rather than ban it. So ultimately, I'm really psyched about the fact that we are at least discussing this on a national level. The media is involved. A lot of big names are talking about cryptos right now. So it's a great time, I guess, for crypto in India.
Okay, and what are your kind of projections? You are probably 5 years old now. I'm not very sure about that. If you can just tell us how is your business growing and where are you headed? What are your projections?
Yeah. So we launched in 2018. So we're about 3 years old, and in the last 12 months alone, we've grown about 700 or 800% in terms of trading volumes, and about 300 to 400% in terms of signups. And as an industry, I think right now we are at about 10 million total participants. I see this growing to at least 30 to 40 million in the next 18 months in India. And in terms of the size of the industry, I think India today has about $1.5 billion worth of cryptocurrencies held in the country. I think we can take this to maybe $5 billion or $10 billion worth of cryptocurrencies in the country. And that's my projection for the next 18 to 24 months, probably.
Right. One last question that it comes from a reader, from an audience. He says, at times, people keep getting mails and text messages asking you to do certain operation on your system every day, to what they call the mining of certain cryptocurrency, which someday will probably become of big value. Those kind of things, probably are infusing a lot of doubts and creating trust issues and transparency issues for this asset class. What are your views, and how does one handle this?
See, yeah, I think where the question is coming from is, like, if you look at the history of Bitcoin, how it started was in the initial days, and if you had a computer, you could mine Bitcoin and earn them. And today, what happened is whoever mined Bitcoin back in those days is, holding a gold mine. And then what happens is you hear about these new cryptocurrency, and they say that similar to Bitcoin, you can do the same with these also. You can mine it today, and tomorrow it will be valuable. Now the thing is, I can't really put a blanket saying they're all bad, they're all good. But the important factor is to first look into what is it being built for, the use case. Like I said, those 4 classifications, you have to see where is it falling. The second is who's the team behind it. A lot of times what happens is if you're thinking about scams, they happen from anonymous founding teams where you don't know who's behind it. So do not get into projects where you do not know who the team behind it is. Second, do not get into it without understanding what it is being built for. Like the use cases of cryptocurrencies are very, very important, and the classification under what do they fall is also again something that you should really look into. So without understanding it, do not take anyone's word, because building a cryptocurrency is not rocket science. It's as easy as building a new website. Just like I cannot build a website and tell you that this is going to be as valuable as like a Facebook or a Google. No one can just create a cryptocurrency and tell you that it is going to be the next Bitcoin or the next Ethereum. So it's very important to understand what is it being built for and who are the team behind it. I think these are 2 really important factors.
Thank you, Nishal. We'll have to wrap it here. Thank you for all your perspectives and a lot of gyan. I myself have learned a lot of stuff, I must say. You are really very thorough with this. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks a lot for inviting me out here. It's fun.
Over to you, Chiranjeevi.
Thank you so much, gentlemen. That was really an insightful conversation, and answered a lot of doubts and questions that users have had over the past few months. And hopefully the government was also probably listening in to some of the comments made by Mr. Shetty. That brings us to the close of the sessions that we had planned for you today at the ETMarkets Conclave. I will now like to invite Mr. Sanjeev Kumar, Business Head at ET Digital, to give his vote of thanks and conclude the event. Over to you, Sanjeev, sir.
Sanjeev, hi.
Yeah. Hi, sir. Over to you. I think your mic is on mute. Still on mute. Yeah, now it's fine. Yeah.
Yeah. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, and blockchain are creating a lot of buzz around the world these days. Though in India, we are still in an uncharted territory. At ETMarkets.com, we always try to be on top of things, chase trends, and keep our readers up to date on the latest happenings. This effort was largely in that direction. It was really wonderful to see some of the best brains from the domain offering their views, perspectives, and updating us on the latest happenings. I was excited to see a large number of registrations and very good participation. And there were hundreds of senior executives from India Inc. and the technology domain with us today for this event. My sincere thanks to you all. I'm sure you have had some solid stuff to take home from this event. We have had a galaxy of industry experts brainstorm over these issues and the possibilities. I would like to express our sincere thanks to Sopnendu Mohanty of Singapore Monetary Authority and keynote speaker Massimo Buonomo, who is a former UN global expert on blockchain and cryptocurrency. They joined us from overseas from different time zones. And of course, Malik Khan Kotadia of Global Impact FinTech Forum, who joined us from the Philippines. Thank you, Prasanna Lohan of DCB Bank, Nishchal Shetty of WazirX, former Axis Bank CTO RVS Sridhar, Ajit Khurana of SOSV NOX, Manish Kumar of Grex and RealX, Anirudh Rastogi of Ikigai Law, Samrat Kishore of Global Nest Ventures, Siddharth Menon of WazirX, and Sharat Chandra of GBA India for taking their time out and sharing your thoughts and ideas and making the event so very engaging. We thank WazirX for joining us as the presenting partner for this event and GIFT for its knowledge support in the event. Last but not the least, thank you, dear audience, for showing overwhelming interest and being there with us. These virtual events will now be a regular on etmarkets.com. We plan to hold such virtual interactions frequently to keep the dialogue going on and engage with you more closely. We look forward to seeing you again very soon. Till then, stay safe. All the best.
Thank you, Sanjeev. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. That concludes the event for today.